Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 326. I am Peter, and shockingly, not here as Matt, but for the first time in like 2 months, Connor has graced us with his appearance.
It's closer to 3 months, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I can't remember. I was just ballparking.
It's been crazy. My schedule has not given me a Friday or Saturday off in months, barring one, and I spent that with some health problems.
In the hospital.
Fun.
Yeah. So you got a cat now, though. So that's plus news.
I do. She's down here. She was very energetic like 10 minutes ago and causing trouble, but she seems to be going to sleep now, so I might be getting away with it.
Oh, good. This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together every week. We talk about DC Comics we read. Coming up on this week's show, we have kind of a weird lopsided itinerary because Connor's got a bunch of Patreon books to catch up on, and hasn't necessarily read a lot of the newer books. But here's what's on the schedule for today. I will be talking about Dark Crisis issue 5, as well as Dark Crisis: The Deadly Green issue 1. We'll both be talking about Batman issue 128. I checked out Gotham City Year 1 issue 1. We both checked out Joker: The Man Who Stopped Laughing issue 1. Carl will be looking at Tim Drake Robin issue 1, which is a Patreon book, but it's also a book just from last week, so it's still kind of a new one. Also, he'll be looking at Harley Quinn issue 16 as a Patreon book. I'll have Animal Man 24 as a Patreon book, and then finally Connor will wrap up with Noctera issue 10, also a Patreon book. So, weird episode, but bear with us. It's Matt's birthday this weekend, which is why he's not available to record. So, but on the upside, you get Connor instead. You will see Matt quite soon, though, because as I mentioned on last week's episode, I am going to be away for a week, and as a result, there'll be no regular episode next week, but you will get a Q&A episode with myself and Matt. We're recording that on Monday, and we've already had some questions in on Twitter. You can send in or reply to the tweet on @DC Comics Podcast, which you can find us on there on Twitter, and ask us some questions on there, or you can send them to mftvquestions@gmail.com. By the time this goes out, you'll only have maybe a day or two at most if you're a patron, but try and get the questions in, and me and Matt will just have a sort of chill episode chatting about various comics bollocks over the course, and then we'll be back the following week with a regular episode, maybe with a few of next week's books sprinkled in if there are some big ones, and just go from there. So that is the plan. So yeah, make sure you get your questions in for the Q&A episode, which is recording on Monday. But that is the plan for the next couple of weeks. So apologies for any disruption, but we'll get into things. We do have one bit of hefty news, actually. So we'll get to that.
I saw the headline. I didn't actually read the thing yet.
We'll get to that soon. But, Connor.
Oh, I forgot about this shite.
There's always time for a Comixology top 10.
And in tradition, I will say, is it Batman? Is it X-Men?
Well, what's so beautiful about this is that you've not been here for so long, that you've not even been here for the new split list that is now the norm.
Sorry, what?
Well, this is not my fault. This is Comixology and Amazon's doing. Now they separate Tuesday and Wednesday releases, and there's no way to mix them. So we'll be looking at the Tuesday top 10, and it's still top 10 as of right now, but it's just the books that were released on Tuesday, right? So we'll look at the top 10 DC books right now, and then we'll have a quick look at what the rest of the industry's got going on in the Wednesday top 10.
I have to sit through 20 books?
Yes, you do.
Oh, god damn it.
So just look at the DC books. What do you think the number one Comixology DC selling book is right now?
Despite there being 2 number ones, I still think it's Batman.
It's not.
Oh, okay. Is it the Tom King one?
It's not.
Is it the Joker one?
It's not.
What the hell did they have this week? Is it a Dark Crisis?
Dark Crisis issue 4 is.
Yeah, but while I understand that, hey, events sell, issue 4, like, the middle of the event, I expected to sell less than 2 number ones, and still maybe Batman at the start, relatively at the start of a run.
I mean, it's just doing well, I guess. I mean,
it is. It just surprised me.
Yeah, Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 4 is the #1 DC book right now on Comixology. We're recording this on Friday, by the way, just in case, because normally it's Saturday, just in case there's some discrepancies if you're usually checking them to see if we're accurate, because obviously these will shift a little bit as the week goes on. #2 is Batman, issue 128. #3 is Dark Crisis: The Deadly Green one shot.
Surprised to see that outselling the two new books.
#4 is Gotham City Year 1, issue 1. #5 is The Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing, issue 1. #6 is Black Adam, The Justice Society Files, Dr. Fate, issue 1. #7, is Poison Ivy, issue 5. #8 is Multiversity 18 Justice. #9 is Sword of Azrael, issue 3. And #10 is Mad Magazine, issue 28, which only tells me that that's them run out of books. Except
there's probably only 9 books, yeah.
Well, that's actually not true. Sadly, Monkey Prince came in lower than that.
Huh.
So
people do not care about that book.
Apparently not.
At least not on Comixology UK, it seems.
This is US Comixology.
Oh, this is US? Oh, okay.
I am noticing here, though, there's a Batman Long Halloween Haunting Night Deluxe that's out now, which is going for $30 on Comixology.
Why? I get the appeal of buying deluxe editions. I tend to prefer them in my physical copies. I don't buy paperbacks anymore. I exclusively buy hardcovers, especially deluxes or omnis. But who's buying it digitally? Unless it's like on a really good sale. Like sometimes you get them on a great sale, but
unless it's like combining 2 books together. But this looks like it's just the same 3 issues. It's got a new cover and it's got a really awkward title. It's Batman: The Long Halloween, the prequel, Haunting Night, which is just to make it obvious that it's connected in some way. But
yeah, that's
digitally, I don't think it really offers much.
I think I have some digital things deluxe, like the Lemire and Sorrentino Green Arrow Deluxe. I picked up it dirt cheap in a sale at one point. And it's like, that's like 3 trades worth. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but alternatively, you're buying 3 different trades, whereas with this, it's just the exact same trade repackaged. Now, I've not checked, but like if they're really sneaky, they might have delisted the old one.
They don't usually.
Admittedly.
I mean, well, okay, let me rephrase. They didn't used to when it was Comixology. I don't know now that everything's on Amazon if they changed that.
I don't know.
There might be a few little extras in there for it being a deluxe, like some behind the scenes,
some backup
stuff.
material things. Yeah. Once in a blue moon, they might be recolored or something, so there's actually a difference to the art. But
that's usually with the older, the older releases stuff, though.
So yeah, that's pretty much that then for the DC top 10. Looking on Wednesday to see what's happening in the rest of the industry here, top 10 wise. And also, people may be wondering, last week I said I was going to do the Night of the Ghoul Dark Horse book, the Scott Snyder and Frankie Villa book. The reason why I haven't actually is because it wasn't until I went to actually look at it today that I discovered that it's actually just coming out in physical now. It was actually already completely released digitally, like last year. This was like a Comixology original, like exclusive thing for a while.
I just assumed it was a new one because I knew the book you were talking about.
Yeah, I didn't. So that surprised me. So there still will be the odd sprinkling of non-DC books coming, but I'm preparing for a trip this week, so any reason to lighten the load a little bit was taken happily. So, but that's why it's not here, just in case anyone's wondering. On the docket this week. But what we do have in this Comixology top 10 for, well, I was going to say for Marvel, for Wednesday. Mostly Marvel, as you might imagine. Any guesses as to #1 for the rest of the industry?
I honestly have no idea what has been coming out in the last few months. But X-Men?
Technically, yeah. Axe X-Men issue 1. So Axe has been the thing that they've had a lot of in the last couple months.
The event stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's your boy Kieran Gillen writing this. So he's been writing a lot of this stuff.
Is.
So
yeah, I'm still planning on catching up and getting there at some point, but time. I've not read like any comics in like months. It's bad.
#2 is X-Men Red issue 7. #3 is Spider-Man issue 1. and this is by Dan Slott and Mark Bagley. So you've got the Ultimate Spider-Man artist with Slott, who's previously written about 300 issues of Spider-Man.
He has already by far written more Spider-Man than any other writer.
Yeah, I was exaggerating a little bit, but I don't think I'm actually that far off, which is the scary part.
Yeah.
Because he was one of the rotating 4 writers when it was weekly for like a year or something like that, and then he was on the book for like, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years maybe.
I think it was longer than that, wasn't it? Because he had his main run, and then he had his Superior run, and then he had the post-Superior stuff.
Yeah, and then back to with the across the Spider-Verse and all that shit.
Yeah, I think it was probably closer to 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, which wasn't like his stuff. Like, I guess a lot of flack for not being amazing, and it's not amazing, but it's perfectly readable. It's like a perfectly fine.
I dipped in and out and tried bits and pieces. It never like grabbed me to stick with it, but honestly, no Spider-Man book ever has.
I think if you want to just binge read some Spider-Man, it's probably perfectly fine for that. It's just that it was so long and it wasn't anything special that people were just gasping out for new voices on Spider-Man. But that's obviously not him taking over Amazing. This is a separate book, so whatever.
Yes.
Number 4, we're going elsewhere here with Miracle Man, which is a Neil Gaiman and Jason Aaron.
That's still Marvel.
Is that still Marvel?
Yeah, they acquired Miracle Man after. It was a lot of rights issues, because obviously the Alan Moore stuff. But yeah, it's Marvel Publishing.
Oh yeah, I could see the Marvel logo down in the corner that I'm looking for. Do you know what's annoying? Is that Marvel don't have like a standard dress on their covers anymore, so they're not always obvious.
Yeah.
Number 5 is Axe Star Fox issue 1, also Kieran Gillen writing that. Number 6 is The Dead Lucky issue 3. So I think we're finally out of a Marvel book. Yes, looks like
I don't know what that is.
An indie book here. So this is from Melissa Flores and artist French Carlo Mango or Magano. Yeah, that was an Image book. Issue 3.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe it must have some buzz if it's cracking this top 10 as high as this.
Must do, yeah. I've never heard of it.
Number 7 is Marauders issue 7. More X books. Steve Orlando's on that just now.
Yeah, which sucks because that's the Kitty Pryde book.
That's a shame. That Texas Blood issue 18 is number 8. That's Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips.
I have been meaning to check that out for a while. It looks really good.
Yeah. Also Image. Junkyard Joe issue 1 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very odd, very odd. Yeah, you weren't even here for the announcement of 2 new Jeff Johns books recently.
No, I wasn't. I was not thrilled. Obviously, I love JSA. I love John's JSA. I don't want more of it. I want a new crack at someone doing a JSA book, really. I don't know. Maybe that's a particularly negative take, but I want new writers as well. On properties. It's the same thing with the Dan Slott on Spider-Man, right? Like, there's so much Dan Slott Spider-Man out there. Who's asking for more?
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to read it, and I'm hopeful it'll be good. And Johns hasn't been on a good ongoing book in quite some time because he's not really had any ongoing books in quite a long time. So.
I mean, honestly, the only thing that he's written that's been worth reading in quite a while is, in my opinion, has been Doomsday Clock. I don't think he's written anything else that's worth bothering with.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, since Rebirth, or I mean, I'd include the Rebirth one shot is worth reading as well, but
Yeah, but I mean, even like, there's a good amount of his New 52 stuff, which is just like, yeah, it's fine.
It's not as good. No, there's parts of his Justice League run that are quite good. There's a little bit of his Aquaman that's quite good, but none of it's as good as his pre-New 52 runs. Yeah, no, I don't think that's not even like an unpopular opinion. I don't think that's people.
No, I don't think it is either. I think it's just like, for a long time he's been extremely busy doing other things, and I think that has mostly kind of shown in the quality of his comics work.
I wonder if a lot of that's drying up. I mean, Stargirl's got season 3 coming, but I wonder if a lot of the other things have dried up. So now he's got more time for comics again.
Maybe. Yeah.
very possible. Number 10 on the non-DC list is Time Before Time, issue 17, another Image book. So Image has got Image 30th anniversary plastered all over its covers here. So I wonder if they're making a big push, and that's why they're doing quite well in this top 10. Because they're outselling this week anyway right now. Hulk issue 9's number 11, Captain America, Sentinel of Liberties number 12. The last issue, the Ant-Man mini by Al Ewing's number 13. So yeah, there's like some reasonable sized Marvel books that are, getting booted out the top 10 for some of these. So yeah,
it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. So very good. But there you go. That's the top 10. So yeah. As far as like non-DC books that are worth reading, by all means, keep us informed if there's juicy looking ones. I won't promise we'll do any of them, but let us know them existing. It's always good. So, very cool. All right, so the bit of news that we have this week. So New York Comic Con's kind of going on right now, and they had like one big announcement so far, but there'll probably be more over the weekend. I don't know if they'll be big. I feel like almost
not as big as this.
Yeah, almost every year for these Comic Cons, I feel like we expect like a slate of announcements, and it's only ever when they've actually got like a new wave coming of something that they've got a big line of titles to talk about.
Yeah, honestly, this is probably the biggest announcement we've had at one of the major cons in quite a while.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember when they did all the Future State, which was leading into all this new era of books, Infinite Frontier. Like, that wasn't even one of the bigger cons. It was just what everyone happened to be that time of year.
Yeah, we got most of that. Was that not in the... what was the DC event?
Fandom,
yeah. Did we not get a lot of that around that time?
I can't remember. I really can't. But I'm pretty confident saying it wasn't San Diego or New York Comic Con. Like, I'm pretty confident saying it wasn't either of those.
Yeah, I don't think it was either.
And even Rebirth back in the day, that was like WonderCon, I want to say.
That was WonderCon, yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, they just kind of... And to be fair, they are saying that this the end of Dark Crisis and get into this new phase... This is like a reset. This is going to be a new phase of DC, the new era of DC.
They got a new name for it, don't they?
They do. I'm just going to read through some of this Newsarama article, and we can get some of the details as we go here. So, during the Exploring the Universe panel at Comic-Con, DC announced its first 2023 event called Lazarus Planet. So they teased this in September. So they put out an image showing some of the characters that are going to be involved in this, and there's some weird things here, like John Kent's got like an electric blue Superman outfit. Batman's got a Dr. Fate helmet on.
Cyborg's there.
The Cyborg's there. So yeah, heroes transformed, secrets revealed, powers unleashed. Is the text that DC had along with this image they put out. So we also have the Demon Neza holding Monkey Prince. So yeah, Devil Neza is really becoming more of a staple right now at DC. From just like the mini with Mark Waid to being in this, being brought up in some of the other books, and now more plans coming.
Yeah, like I was really not hot on the Nezha stuff in it was in Batman Superman, wasn't it?
Yes.
I was not like too hot on that, so that's a little not super compelling for me as a start to this event. Was the weakest element of that book for me, and then that's the linchpin for this. It's okay. Well,
let's see here. Billy Batson is also going to be released from the Rock of Eternity, where he's trapped just now ever since that Titans Academy crossover thing they hammed, which none of us actually read because it wasn't very good. But
the only reason I know that he was trapped is because of the Mary Marvel Shazam.
Yeah, which is very good.
It is actually. I was trying to catch up on some stuff, and I did get the first issue or two of that read.
Yeah. So Wade's going to be the architect for Lazarus Planet, according to this article. He'll be teaming up with Riccardo Federici. That's not a bad name. Jean Lun Yang. Makes sense with Monkey Prince involved. Billy Tan, Nicole Maines, Skylar Partridge, and Francis Manipal. Philip Kennedy Johnson, Josie Campbell, Dan Waters, and more. Creative teams for the event will be announced alongside solicit text and covers in the solicitations that are coming up later this month. So we should have more details and sort of nitty-gritty parts of this. What we do know right now, according to this article, is that Lazarus Planet will see DC superheroes and supervillains transform for the event, and everything spins out of the Lazarus volcano exploding in Batman vs. Robin issue 4 in December. It'll spew transformative chemicals into the atmosphere, creating chaos all over the DC universe as Earth Zero / Prime citizens begin to develop strange new abilities or see their current abilities altered. Sounds like a bit of a let's just go crazy with everyone's like shit and do crazy stuff.
A little bit, yeah. Also, it makes that Batman versus Robin book feel really weird to me in that, like, hey, don't worry about it. Issue 4, that's just going to set us up into the event. That's all you need to know. Like it's already given us that. And like, kind of makes it feel a little bit inconsequential in its own right.
Have you read issue 1 of it
yet? No, I didn't get to it yet.
Well, I don't think you'll feel that way when you read it.
Okay.
We may not like it, but I mean, me and Matt both liked it. We both kind of love kind of the crazy thing it started doing and big character deals. But I will say this: like nothing about that first issue felt like this is leading to setting up the event or some random event. You know that.
Fair enough.
This is coming as kind of a surprise that book's going to be the launching pad for it. Other than the fact that Neza in some ways going to be involved, but like there's one main talking point coming out of issue 1 of that book, and it has nothing to do with events or Neza or building to stuff. You know, it's all a very specific character thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see how it progresses as issue 2, 3, and so on. But yeah, obviously all the listeners know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, some wacky things here. So we've got some bullet points. What's this say? An announcement accompanying the Explode Universe panel that presents the following questions. Can Power Girl free herself from the out-of-control Omen? Who are the mysterious trio claiming to be resurrected siblings of Raven? Will Dreamer's visions guide our heroes to the path of victory? Can Mercy Graves survive the transformation she's undergone? There's actually a bunch more of these. I think what I'm getting from this is that, yeah, it's kind of an event, but it doesn't sound like it's the big... Like, this is not like the next Dark Crisis. This feels like a smaller, just fun, wacky event to me.
Kind of weird. Not necessarily an inherently bad way, just strange, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of like strange, random things going on.
Questions
here.
In there, Firestorm, a bunch of interesting characters that haven't all necessarily been used that much recently.
Yeah, Monkey Prince. Some of these are explaining some of the creatives mentioned. Obviously, Monkey Prince explains Yang. Dreamer explains Mains.
Yeah. And obviously you get Damien in there and stuff. So DC teases, but why could the fate of all life as we know it be in the hands of Monkey Prince? ? So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm curious to try it and see what wacky things it gets up to.
Yeah, I'm just looking slightly further down the arc of the release schedule. It is not a numbered.
No,
event.
It's their name. So it looks like a series of one shots. Although I'm sure it probably just reads like 1 through 8 or whatever.
Kind of weird that you got an Alpha and Omega bookending it. Like it's pretty common now. But instead of being like a 1 to 5 in the middle, it's 5 issues with different names entirely.
I will say this: I do quite like that. It's quick. It's it's just weekly for 2 months and then that's over. I do think for these smaller events this works better because it's these can drag on if you're sort of pulling them out over the course of a whole year, kind of thing.
Yeah. They mentioned as a thing down here the next phase of the thing is called the Dawn of the DCU.
That's what it was. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
It's a strange name, at least seems to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I am glad to see Mark Waid getting even more, his fingers in even more pies. Like, I mean, Batman vs Robin is way more in continuity than World's Finest is. It's directly tying into a lot of big things that have happened recently.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool. So yeah, it starts on the 10th of January and runs weekly through the 21st of February. Assuming it all stays on schedule, of course, and there's no delays. But
I would, given that it seems to be a lot of different teams, I would imagine it's probably Waid handling the Alpha and Omega, and then a different team on each of the one shots.
And they're probably all going to focus a bit more on one specific character. And
that's my guess. So I'm assuming that'll probably mean it'll be okay schedule wise because they're all going to be running fairly independently and should hit mostly on time. I imagine it's probably only the same artist on the Alpha and Omega as well, and maybe not even that, let's be honest.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like super excited about this. Like it's kind of like this weird little like wacky event to do some crazy stuff with, to use some characters that don't get used as much. So I'm not in like epic hype levels necessarily, and the fact that it's going to be all these teams rotate, like I'd be much more excited for this if it was like, oh, Mark Waid's writing the whole thing. I'm not even, and I'm not just even him specifically, just any writer I like writing the whole thing would be more exciting to me than, oh, we're doing this thing where all these different writers are going to take an issue each and stuff. I'm inherently less interested in that in general because I want a more focused thing that feels like one, idea. But
this feels more like here's a thematic scene that we're setting, and then here's a bunch of writers.
Yeah,
it's almost like what would normally be tie-ins. Each of those seems to be just, this is the event.
Yeah, so it's inherently less exciting. I'm hoping it will be at least a nice little fun thing to talk about and read for a couple of months, and spice up those first couple of typically drier comic book months, and then then they can start teasing whatever their big summer thing is, what they usually do.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. That was the big news of the week was this new event coming in January and in February. So that's Lazarus Planet. So very good. All right. So that's about it for news. Anything interesting you'd like to share with the audience after your long absence?
I'm tired.
Riveting stuff. I'm sure they're all thrilled to have you back.
I'm just wondering if I have read anything else that wasn't really, I've been catching up on the DC books, so I've not been reading enough of those to really comment on them. I've enjoyed what I was catching up on. The first couple issues of I read the collection of the Azrael stuff from Urban Legends, and then the first issue. So far, I'm actually really enjoying that quite a lot more than I thought I was going to. Been enjoying Poison Ivy, the first couple issues of that. I think I read the first 3. That's a really fun series. And I see now that that's kind of pseudo ongoing.
Yeah,
I don't know if you spoke about that.
Yeah, no, we did. We noticed it in either solicits or maybe when an issue came out that it kind of changed the phrasing on it to.
Yeah, I know. I'm completely blank on who writes it now, but I saw them
Wilson.
tweeting. Yeah, I saw them tweeting the other day saying, "Yeah, at the minute it's 12 issues, up from 6, but basically, as long as sales are good, they can kind of just keep extending it indefinitely."
It's starting to feel like anything that's not Batman or Superman or Justice League is probably under that kind of deal to an extent now.
It is a little bit, yeah.
Because I saw people on Twitter this week talking about how DC Comics only have like 4 or 5 ongoings that aren't Batman related in some way. It's like Superman, Son of Kal-El, Wonder Woman, Flash. I'm trying to think of what other ones are, but it was only a handful of books, and every other one was either Nightwing's obviously a Bat character, so on and so on. And then everything else was minis and stuff, and that's not necessarily a big deal as long as you always have a nice roster of the minis and things like that. But it does sound quite damning when you stop and think about it. And
yeah, I think like when you put it like that, it sounds bad. But if you just look at their overall slate, obviously there is a lot of Bat books. There's no denying that. But I do think there's quite a lot of variety is there as well. You got a couple of different Aquaman things going on right now. You've got the Shazam book. You've got the Azrael book technically is connected, but also it's so unrelated to anything Gotham that it kind of feels completely separate right now.
Yeah.
You got things like Jurassic League and the DC Mechs.
I mean, I'm not reading as many books right now as I have done in the past on the show, but like I would say that the concentration of stuff I really like is quite good. Like, between these like sort of prestigious Tom King minis and between things like the Shazam mini and
DC Vampires.
Yeah, Nice House in the Lake, to see like there's a lot of good things. Like last week especially, like I had like 4 books that I was given like an 8.5 or higher to. Like I was in
that's a good week.
Delightful mood last week, I have to say. So yeah, it's I think you just have to sort of look at it in a different lens sometimes. But that said, though, would I like an ongoing Green Lantern book that I want to read, an ongoing Green Arrow, an ongoing, fill in your character name. Yeah, a lot of them I would like.
Does not have to be green.
Does not. That was just the first two that came to mind. Green Hornet, Green Ranger.
There's definitely an ongoing Green Ranger book, let's be honest.
There's like 2 ongoing Power Rangers books. I don't know if there's a Green Ranger ongoing book, but
if there was any Ranger that could sell an ongoing,
that's true. He's definitely the most popular one. There's no denying that. No denying that at all. Yeah.
And with good reason.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of good books right now, even if I'm not up to date on all of them. But there are a lot of things that are super interesting, even if the ongoings are mostly Batman.
Yeah. But hey, I don't know. I feel like it's easy to sort of focus on some of those details and get feeling down. But I'm actually quite happy with the quality of what I'm reading right now. So
yeah,
well, it's all good. It's all good. But without further ado, I think we'll dive into this week's comics. So start off with the Dark Crisis books. I'm going to start with Dark Crisis issue 5, written by Joshua Williamson and art by Daniel Sampere. Now, technically, Deadly Green takes place arguably before this one, but 2 things. I didn't know that before I read them, so I read Dark Crisis 5 first and was annoyed at an editor's note halfway through the book said, hey, find out what happened here over in this other issue, on sale now. But 2, it's definitely a side book, and Dark Crisis is the main book, so it feels weird to start with a side book. So we're going to start with Dark Crisis issue 5.
That makes sense.
My logic is unwavering. Anyway, so
I am intrigued to hear what's going on in this, because I've not read it since issue.
Oh, you have no idea, do you?
No, because I wasn't really enjoying it, and then I didn't really read anything. I've got a lot of it to catch up on, and I'm like, I just don't want to. But also now I'm like, how batshit insane is this going to sound to me, jumping back in essentially to hearing what issue 5's up to?
Well, gather round for a tale of the Great Darkness and how it has infected Deathstroke, all his lackeys, and the end of the last issue was basically him coming and infecting all of the Legion of Doom, with only Black Adam on his own fighting against everyone. Luckily for him, though, at the start of the issue, a few characters show up to like teleport him out, led by Sideways, who can teleport, obviously. Nice to see him popping up.
Wait, they remembered Sideways exists?
Yeah, they remembered Sideways existed. I feel like this is one of those things where anyone who doesn't read as much DC is
like, who the hell is Sideways?
Yeah, they'll be like, who is this guy? They don't even name him. He's there. He says, "Holy crap!" And I know he's the one opening the portal because I know that's his power. But like, I feel like
otherwise it's just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, who's this? So yeah, Tim, Supergirl, Aqualad, and Mr. Terrific. Well, I guess it's Aquaman now. Sorry, he's been promoted. But they get Black Adam back to the Hall of Justice, where Nightwing's waiting with the others, and so on and so on. But Nightwing's like, yeah, we have to take the fight to him. We get the big typical Crisis page of Pariah looking at all of these infinite Earths all in a row, usual shit, because he's rebirthing the multiverse, yada yada yada. But the big things here is that he's got all of these Justice League members in their own little world, and that's helping him fuel his new multiverse. But Barry and Hal have been traveling between the worlds and are trying to wake up the other Justice Leaguers, which is kind of where we pick up here with them arriving on what the book is calling Earth Batman, which made me chuckle because I thought, oh, Matt will love that. Earth Batman.
That's Matt's favorite Earth.
Yeah, so they're fighting Bruce and they're trying to like snap him out of it and, hey, Bruce, it's us and this is not real, like, remember who you are, kind of thing. And Bruce is fighting Barry. Hal realizes that he does have his ring. He thought he didn't, but it was just kind of covered again by the fakeness of all this. He can feel it, he can sense it through his willpower. So what he's wearing fades away and he has the green outfit. And to wake up Bruce, he shows him the Bat family with a construct, and like here's Dick, Babs, Steph, Cass, Tim, so on and so on, and that wakes him up, and he's like, okay, well, we have to do this, we have to do something. and the heroes on Earth are trying to gather everyone we can. Gar wakes up, he's missing an eye now, he's got an eye patch, he's looking pretty tough.
And more and more like Deathstroke.
Yeah, the JSA are going off to try and handle the multiverse side of things, whilst Dick and the Titans are going to stand their ground and try and fight Deathstroke and his army on Earth. That's when Superman, John that is, and Swamp Thing and Raven show up. Now how they do this is explained in the side book. We'll get to that next. But they show up with the original controller for, like, Pariah's controller for the original Crisis. What he used to set all that off. So, and the thing they find out here is that the Great Darkness isn't corrupting everything. I mean, it's infecting people and taking over, but what's actually happening is that Pariah, and to an extent, by extension, humans are the ones corrupting the Great Darkness. The Great Darkness is acting up because there's a bad influence in it, rather than because the Great Darkness is always going to exist. But so that's the angle we'll look at it from now, and the Pariah's at the center of all that. So yeah, but there's a bunch of interesting characters. Damien goes off and grabs Dr. Light to go do something, which I thought it was a bit awkward being on the same page as the other editor's note, but it's like, hey, go follow what Damien's doing in this other one shot that's coming out soon. To his credit,
there's always a one shot to explain things. Don't worry about it.
To his credit, I don't think this book's actually been that bad with like tons of, because it's mostly just been those Justice League one shots that they've not had to reference in the main book. This is just happens to be that the one page has two editor's notes, two other one shots, one of which is out this week, one is out soon. So it feels a bit much on one page, but it's not been too bad with that overall. But yeah, Deathstroke and his army show up outside the Hall of Justice, and the team go out to fight him. And Black Adam's like saying, "Oh, you're just children, you're just sidekicks. You're not a Justice League." And then Dick has a sort of badass moment where he says, "We never were." And then you get a full 2-page spread of him saying, "We are the Titans," and like the big, group shot of everyone, which includes obviously the Titans that you'd expect with them, but also Supergirl, also John, some other characters who are there like Blue Beetle and some of the speedsters and stuff like that. So it's kind of like all the legacy characters who are on Earth right now teaming up to take on this army, which is kind of neat. Meanwhile, on the Earths and the fake multiverse that Pariah is brewing, Batman, Hal, and Barry, along now with Wonder Woman, who they've went to get, because the last scene kind of implied, we need someone who can help us like snap people out of this quicker, and Wonder Woman's got the lasso, so it stands to reason that might actually speed the process up a little bit. But when they get there, they're actually surprised to find that Clark already kind of knows. He already kind of suspects that this world's a lie, and he's been studying it and trying to understand it. He basically compares it to being lucid in a dream, and then he kind of like makes the reality fade away on his own. And he kind of looks like a, I don't know, cosmic Superman. It looks like he's made of stars when this is all done. And he's like, let's go get our friends and break out of this. So the book started with like an image of like the Grant Morrison multiversity kind of map.
Yes, that
was the first panel, effectively. So here you see it kind of breaking apart, and the Justice League come out, and Pariah's like, no, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't supposed to be happening. The Justice League are all together again, including some of the ones that we didn't see before, like Arthur's there, Ollie, Dinah, and he's all pissed. He's like, you're going to be erased. This is it's all building up to this cliffhanger where Pariah's saying he needed more heroes. He needs more heroes now because he's fueling this multiverse off the heroes. And then they all realize, shit, he's probably talking about Earth. He's talking about Earth Prime. So just as he's saying that, the big ending on Earth is that the reinforcements for Deathstroke's army get there, which is all of the other ones being controlled by the Great Darkness. So Dick and the Titans are staring down a full-page spread of Doomsday, Darkseid, Necron, everyone, every villain.
What the hell is going on in this book?
That's not actually weird. This feels well set up. You've just skipped.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But jumping in at this point, that sounds like out of nowhere. Like for me, I'm like, what? That's why I'm like, what's going on?
Well, I mean, right from the start of the story, like these villains have been. I mean, even before the event itself, we were building up to it. Like that Darkseid and these others villains were being taken over by the darkness, which was then linked to Pariah. So This isn't out of nowhere in the story. This was
Okay. I wasn't saying it was. Yeah.
so. That's your big final page. Is that the Titans are about to be overwhelmed on Earth with every big DC villain basically, and the Justice League are going to have to try and get back to help. So we've got 2 issues left, I think, of this now. So we're building up to a big fight, and I've been digging this quite a bit. I think it's a really entertaining event. I don't think it's particularly as important or as deep as some of the bigger ones that have maybe had more of a lasting appeal, but I'm having a good time. I like how the legacy characters are still feeling elevated. I actually kind of appreciate like Dick turning around saying, no, we're not a Justice League, we're the goddamn Titans. We're still the Titans. It doesn't matter if we're the ones that are now running the show. We're still Titans. We don't have to take that name for for it to mean something. I kind of appreciate that. Sampere's art is been pretty consistent. It really pays off, especially in the big spreads. Whenever you get the big group shot, it looks really good, really detailed. I appreciate the fact that it's very easy to separate when you're in one of the multiverse worlds. So every time you go to a page where you're on one of them, even though they're all vastly different, they're all not Earth. They're all very clearly right away not Earth, whether that's through the color palette or just the wacky locales or whatever it is. So that's always really appreciated. It does suffer from some things that these event books do, is particularly in the art, where while some of the spreads look fantastic, there's so many pages with so many characters like talking or just in the background whilst there's other characters having conversation. Inherently, there's always low quality like side characters just standing around. Like it can never be completely consistent through all the way out. It's just one of the evils of having to do a book like this where you've got everyone in it.
It is. The only way around it is you get Gary Frank to do it on a Doomsday Clock schedule.
Yeah, it gives them
basically
2 to 3 months per issue. Yeah. That's how you do it. Which, to be fair, did pay off. It looked great.
It does. In the long run, looks amazing, makes for a nice collected individual story. But in terms of how event comics have to function and how things need to react to it, well, we saw how there was no reaction to Doomsday Clock in the end because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if I was to critique the story at this point, like, I really like the legacy element of it, and I'm all for the Justice League coming in to like help this big fight going up. I will say the Justice League themselves, like being trapped in these worlds, it did feel maybe a little quick and easy to get them out of it. We kind of built up to this a couple of issues ago with Barry remembering who he was, and then like him going looking for the other Justice League members, and that was all fine. And I didn't really want like tons of issues of him like encountering them one by one. I think what's weird about it is that they've went for this thing in the middle where we saw them go to get Batman, and we sort of show them breaking him out of it, and kind of like skipping ahead and sort of showing how easy it's going to be for the rest of them from that point on. I almost think that's a detriment in a way, because I think if you just had Barry go off and then have a big return moment and have it sort of build up kind of in, like, without really seeing it, so that it just was like, oh hey, like the Justice League are about to come back, and have your big 2-page spread, I think that would have almost maybe worked a little bit better, because it felt like, okay, it's just something that's happening off panel, and we just trust that our primary Justice League characters are doing this on their own. And we can maybe do a little bit of it in the one shots that are running alongside it.
I'm almost surprised that wasn't like a theme of the one shots.
Yeah. No, I think the one shots, from what I read, because I read a couple of them, it was basically just like, here they are in their world, and like the illusion they're in kind of thing, rather than like there being the story of them realizing it necessarily.
Yeah, see that, like if it was me, I probably would have done 1 or 2 at the start that was like that, and then break format and have it be the escaping the world essentially. Yeah,
if they wanted to do it that way, that'd be fine. But I think there's the 2 extremes where you believe it all be kind of in the background, and you have it just be like, oh, like in the background, Batman's been concocting this plan, and now we're going to see it struck, and it's like, yeah, Batman had a plan, bitches. Like, you have it feel like that sort of moment, but for the entire Justice League, or you sort of make it feel harder and tougher, and make it feel more like a real journey to get to that point. This is kind of in between, and as a result, it feels kind of like the worst of both worlds, because it's kind of rushed, so you just get like a little bit of it, and then it skips, and it's like, okay, but they're already out. So it just feels a bit too easy, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, but I think we brought up Doomsday Clock a couple of times. Doomsday Clock felt like this special thing I was excited to read every time. Dark Races has never reached that. Dark Races is not even close to that in terms of like anticipation. But it's been a very enjoyable event to read. If you like your typical event, your typical crisis event with all these ideas being thrown together and referencing the history of the crises, which some DC fans are sick of and some still get a kick out of it. But I think whether or not you're into it kind of largely just depends on your tolerance for that at this point. But I think it's done solidly enough in its craft. Like, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the writing too much. And certainly the art is of a very, very solid level throughout. But barring, of course, the millions of characters that have to get drawn and therefore obviously some in the background and smaller panels and things like that suffer. But that's just how it is. But that's good. Dark Races issue 5, I will probably give that just an 8, just a nice solid 8. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's good junk food event fare, but don't have your expectations too high either. So cool. Dark Races, the Deadly Green issue 1, Ram V, Alex Paknadel and Dan Waters writing, and there's a few artists on it as well. I'll give you them in a wee second when I'm on the page. So yeah, this is basically a group of characters go off on this little side mission to try and figure out, and we see the result of it in the main book already, which is they've got Pariah's original contraption. But this, you can tell why Ram V's been put on this as what is one of the writers. I was expecting a main story and like 2 backups because of the 3 writers. It's not that at all. It's just one big story.
Yeah, those writers are all part of the White Noise group, which is like those, and I think maybe 1 or 2 others that are like a bunch of British writers that all share a studio and kind of work together pretty closely on a lot of things.
Interesting. As far as the art goes, there's 4 artists. It's just kind of split up in various ways. Daniel Bayliss is one of the artists. Tom Derenick has got a section. We got George Cambadis and Brent Peoples. So at first I thought it was just split up evenly, but it's not quite. There is a little bit of like back and forth. So yeah, so they are obviously very inconsistent because of this, unfortunately. That's the first thing that I would say right there. So this is kind of weird. Basically, they're wanting to investigate why the darkness is corrupted, and Alan Scott's there, and they bring in his kids. They bring in Obsidian and Jade because Obsidian especially is connected to the darkness, and he can tell it's corrupted, and they want to investigate it. So they came up with this thing, and I'll be honest, I never quite exactly got the full ins and outs of what this was they were doing. It seems like they travel into Alan's ring, which is like a magic entity of constructs, but it's connected to the darkness. But to go in so that the light doesn't just kill them, they have to have the darkness with them. So Obsidian's sort of beaming in his darkness. So we basically get this mission with John Kent, Raven, Swamp Thing. It's actually both Swamp Things, but when they go in, and this is a neat little touch actually, Alec Holland isn't there. And Levi explains that Alec's not really a person anymore. He's just like a part of the Green, and because he has no like human willpower, he can't exist in here because this is a place of willpower. So it's just Levi wants to go in. So I thought it was an interesting little that's probably the benefit of having Ram V be one of the creatives on this. He's got a cool little couple of details for his boy. But yeah, so they go in and. Yeah, Constantine goes in as well, but he gets separated and talks to Upside Down Man that I think turns into Trigon, and then eventually, you'll know better than I do. Who's the demon with the wings that he talks to a lot?
Who talks to?
The Constantine talks to. I didn't get who this was, to be honest, but I'm assuming if you're a Constantine fan, you'll know who it is.
I don't know off the top of my head.
He said he liked David Bowie.
That could be a lot of things, let's be honest.
Bloody hell. Well, when I get to the pages, maybe you'll have some context clues.
Maybe, yeah.
I can describe it a little bit better. But yeah, so they talk about how dangerous it is. A couple of characters are there to sort of like guard their bodies. Wonder Girl's there, Jade stays there, Dr. Fate's there. But they go in. And as far as the quality of the book goes, now that I've set up what the concept is, it's kind of a mixed bag of an issue, and I think I felt a little conflicted reading it because there's little moments with like Swamp Thing or John that I like, and there's like the ultimate thing they get. But this is an oversized book. This is a like an annual sized book. It's like 40 pages or whatever. And I don't think it needs to be that long. I think it feels stretched out. I think it feels like there's a lot of excess in here that I don't think need to be there. And I felt like this weird journey inside this, inside the ring of willpower that's all nothing but constructs, and constructs from Alan Scott's ring. So still green, but obviously the flame rather than the traditional Green Lantern Corps constructs. So you've got Swamp Thing, Raven, and John in here, but the thrust of the plot for the middle of the issue is that the darkness that's in here is corrupting them, and they start kind of like not trusting each other, specifically not trusting Raven, because Raven's also connected to the darkness, because she's got evil in her because of Trigon and all that, and that's why she's here, because she can navigate better because she's lived with it her whole life. So it gets to this point where John and Swamp Thing start fighting with her and not trusting her, thinking she's like trying to make them walk in circles, because they walk in circles at one point. It's not her fault, but they think it is. And all of this conflict, I just kind of felt like this feels like plot for plot's sake. And I get that you're trying to say that the darkness corrupts and it's affecting them and all that, and there's nothing wrong with that idea per se. I just never really felt like there was that much of a point to it. This felt like the entire conceit of what the story is, like what they get by the end, seems like a fun idea, and the realization that Pariah's infecting the Dark Races, or not the Dark Race, infecting the Great Darkness and not the other way around, is an interesting plot development. I'm not so sure I actually really like the journey, what the story of this book is, which is a shame, because I really like Ram V, at least out of the creatives, and I like a lot of the characters that are involved. Obviously not Constantine, because screw him, but the rest of them I quite I quite enjoy. So yeah, I found it a lot, and there was a lot of cutting back to like Constantine when he's talking to the Upside Down Man, and then that turns into Trigon, and then like a lot of just philosophical sort of nonsense that just kind of my eyes start to glaze over after a while about this like discussion about humanity and good and evil and all that. It didn't really feel like it had much like shape to it that felt like it had a point, other than to just sound, kind of smart and like, oh, we're talking about things. The killer thing towards the end is that Levi kind of like surrounds John in like a green armor of sorts, made of like Swamp Thing looking vines, to give him the power to like get through and stuff like that. So that's kind of neat. Yeah. So yeah, the dude that Constantine talks to has got big red wings.
The only thing I can think of with the Bowie reference would be Lucifer.
I think maybe Lucifer. Yeah.
Because obviously Lucifer in the Vertigo take on Lucifer that Constantine interacted with a lot was modeled on Bowie. So that's kind of the only thing I can think of there. But I don't know. Maybe this is a different take on it that they've been using in DC Universe lately that I've not seen.
Yeah, Constantine just says at the end, "Don't worry about me. All I did was have a little chin wag with the dark." That's all he says about it to the others when he gets back. This is definitely something where I think a Constantine reader would probably just know who this is.
Yeah, that's my best guess. But obviously, Lucifer typically doesn't look that demonic in the Vertigo stuff, but maybe in...
Well, he's not demonic here. He's got wings. He's got maybe pointy ears, but that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to guess Lucifer then.
Yeah, I think he was impersonating Upside Down Man and then Trigon, but when he ultimately turns into this, he's just like a sort of naked human with red wings.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go with that.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, I felt a little unfulfilled with this. Obviously, the art being inconsistent as well. Like, it would have been nice as well, because once they go, it'd have been nice if there was one artist for everything back in the basement of the Hall of Justice, where they weren't inside the ring, and then maybe a different artist for inside the ring. But it doesn't work like that. Like when we get back to there, I mean, we do cut back there a couple of times throughout the issue when it's the other characters talking about Alan being in pain or needing help, and his kids have to kind of like help him through, because to make this work, because Obsidian's like blasting darkness into him, he's effectively having like a waking nightmare the whole time. whilst they're inside his ring. The whole thing's like, I never really quite understood like the explanation from Obsidian at the start of to what they were exactly doing, and like they were going into this ring to check out if what was going on with the darkness. Like I just sort of vaguely got it. I didn't really quite like feel like I had it properly
was it kind
explained.
of just something about it too hard?
It felt like that. Yeah, I never quite got exactly what it was going on necessarily, or why this was going to work. So I felt just a little bit like at arm's reach from the comic at all times, I think, because of that. Like I say, the central conflict, I thought. So sadly, despite the fact that I like a lot of these characters and I like Ram V, I think I'm landing on something like a 6 for this. Like I do not think it's like a essential read for the event by any means. Which it didn't need to be good necessarily, but I felt a bit unfulfilled and just like, it was an overlong issue. It felt overlong. I felt a little disheartened by it by the end, which is a shame for all the reasons I stated. But at the same time, it's not the worst thing ever. And I suspect that if you're a bigger Constantine fan, you probably get something more out of it than I did.
It sounds kind of typical event tie-in fare.
Yeah, sadly,
because a lot of event tie-ins are not terrible, but they're kind of just superfluous. They're there to, make the company a bit more money, really, at the end of the day. Which
I wasn't necessarily going to be mad about, but I just thought because it was focusing on Swamp Thing and it was focusing on, Ram V was one of the writers on it, I thought, I might quite like this, but it still didn't escape that just superfluous event tie-in feeling. So it's a shame, but it is what it is. So there you go. Batman 128, Chip Zdarsky writing, Jorge Jimenez on the art. So you've not been here for the first couple issues of this Batman run.
I read it all this week.
Well, brief summary of your thoughts on the previous issues before we...
Intriguing. I'm not completely sold yet, but I'm open to seeing what it does.
Yeah, I thought this was a roller coaster because I liked the first issue, but it didn't blow me away. Basically the robot came out at the end and I went, oh, what? And then next issue it was like, oh wait, it's like a Terminator hunting down the Bat. This is actually kind of awesome. And then it dropped the Zur-En-Arr thing on me and I went, oh god, what's it doing now?
Yeah, that's where I was like, okay, now I'm really intrigued because what?
And the last issue where we sort of had this explanation that the Batman of Zur-En-Arr built this thing, which is why regular Batman doesn't know about it. It was like another part of his mind that did it. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, I suppose. And then this issue kind of like catapults things a bit further with like the fall. Obviously, the last issue ended with Superman showing up. And the first thought that me and Matt had, of course, which is the first thought Batman basically has, is like, yeah, but if Batman built this thing, he probably built it because this is all very much like Tower of Babel, but he built it for himself.
In previous issues,
it was they weren't hiding that comparison, obviously, but this is basically Tower of Babel, but for himself. But naturally, it's also designed to handle all the other members of the league should they try and interfere.
Just in case, yeah.
So there's a fun little bit at the start where Superman tries to fight it, and
stabbed with kryptonite.
Yeah. And then Ollie shows up, and Martian Manhunter shop, Dinah and Hawkgirl. They're all trying to fight it. I actually kind of love this page of like Batman and Superman just lying, both dying together in pain, and Batman
like, you good? It's like, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. There was almost like a comic relief element to them, just sort of like cutting back to them lying. They'd be like, "Hey, Clark, are you alive? Yeah, but you, Bruce, are you alive?" Like I don't know. I got a chuckle for whatever reason. So Bruce is able to crawl over and like pull out the kryptonite, but he's like, hey, he needs like, Fortress of Solitude surgery to like mend them up and stuff like right now. So Tim and Oliver, Tim Drake that is, just in case because I've not mentioned him yet. Go to the Justice League jet, put them on it, and take off. And yeah, so Failsafe's in Gotham. He flees the Justice League members. Nightwing's chasing after it. Oracle's there, calling shots. The 4 Justice League members we mentioned are chasing after it. But when they get to this city street, like all of a sudden there's like guns popping out of the side of the buildings. There's like a very specific like defense for Black Canary that covers her mouth to stop her from screaming. kind of like a respirator, but it's like designed to like limit our breath.
Mostly suffocates her. He even mentions that there's enough oxygen for it to live, just not enough for it to scream, which sounds plausible and something that Batman could do.
Yeah,
right?
And at first I thought, oh, did he just launch that? And then obviously Babs figures it out that, oh, Bruce owns this street or did own this street, and all these defenses were built. Like Failsafe has all this at its disposal. This is like a trap street for the Justice League. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's interesting. So, and actually, I really liked how that scene ends as well, where like Oliver's like, well, what about us? Because like all the superheroes, like Justice League members get taken down, but Oliver's looking at Dick and goes, yeah, but what about us normies? They don't have powers. And then like Failsafe's just like, oh, that just come over and beat the shit out of you.
yeah.
Basically.
Good robot's gonna do that.
I don't know. I like the kind of there's no special like plans for you guys because you don't have any special abilities to worry about.
Yeah, I don't need one. Just beat the shit out of you. That'll do.
So Bruce is like, I've programmed the jet for the fortress. Tim, you need to look after Superman. Do not follow me. So Tim's not happy about it, but Batman dives out the plane into the water and sets off a beeper or something for Aquaman to come and get him.
Yeah.
And he wakes up in Atlantis 2 weeks later. He's been out in like a medical pod for 2 weeks, like healing from all of his wounds.
He's had fish healing him.
Yes. State of the art fish. Fishy. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a fish pun.
Go on. I want to see what you can come up with.
Shut up. Look, the point is that he wakes up and he's healing, and we find out in this 2 weeks, and this is the part where it takes a sleeper. I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. Is Failsafe is taking over Gotham, and it's kind of like a one robot led security state now, waiting for Batman to return. Like it's got most of the heroes are all like imprisoned except one or two that are running around. You see like Cass and Duke running around in the alleys, like in secret. But otherwise, they're all like imprisoned, and he's smashed the bat signal. And the end of the issue is like him using like a bunch of light drones to make a giant bat signal in the sky, and it's basically "Come and get me, Bruce," kind of thing.
Yeah, it kind of lost me a little bit here because this feels like a beat that we've done, obviously a lot in comics in general, but specifically recently, this feels like the end of the Tom King. That with the City of Bane stuff. Even
specifically Batman, because it made me think of No Man's Land a little bit as well.
Yeah. Obviously, that was in the more general Batman stuff, but like recently with the City of Bane, even there was stuff in, I can't remember which Metal event it was. It might have been the second one. It was the miniseries where we followed Dick. Like there was a lot of that stuff going on there. It feels like a pretty. I don't know, like a little bit of I won't say overdone because it's not like exactly the same as all these, but just familiar enough right now. I mean, even the going back slightly further when Tynan, I think it was Tynan, but was on tech at the time with the future Evil Tim stuff.
Yeah.
Like, again, very familiar with that there.
I think it all just kind of depends for me on like how it actually plays out when like is Batman going into the city to take him on? Like how does that? Because I wasn't necessarily thrilled when they revealed Failsafe at the end of the first issue of this arc, but then the second issue was like, no, this is like a Terminator hunting down Batman, and all the Bat family are jumping in and getting their asses kicked. Like I actually really enjoyed what they did with it in the next issue. But
which was this isn't inherently bad.
No, it feels like a bit of a swerve to like a new idea that I wasn't seeing coming. I thought it was just going to be more like Failsafe takes out some Justice League members, and Batman keeps being on the run.
And now it's Failsafe has Gotham. Now get back in there. So, yeah, and again, like I said, it might be really good still. Like I say, the Failsafe stuff so far has been pretty solid. It's more just as a cliffhanger, it doesn't leave me particularly excited. It's more now it's got to prove itself and overcome this cliffhanger as opposed to building off of it and leaving me in a positive place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still impressed with a lot of things that Zdarsky's put in this arc. So even if I end up not loving where the arc ultimately goes, I'm still kind of pumped for like what else he's going to do with the character, because Like, there's a couple of times where he's done something like, I don't know if I like that. There's 2 issues out of 4 have ended with like a cliff. Well, 3 now, I guess, but 2 out of 4 have ended with a cliffhanger where I've went, oh, I don't know about that. And then the next issue I've went, you know what? Actually, it kind of worked for me.
It is, and yeah. So far, I'd say the odds would suggest that they'll probably do the same again, with the next issue of this, where you'll go, do you know what? That kind of worked.
Very, very possibly. Which, he's playing with fire in a weird way. But maybe he doesn't see it that way. Maybe he likes the cliffhangers, but it's just kind of funny that we're like, I don't know about these. Oh, no, I actually ended up pretty good.
It's actually kind of interesting that if it does keep delivering, it'll get to a point where you'll stop feeling worried about the cliffhangers because you'll be like, it's fine, it always delivers. And then it'll not deliver one time and it'll feel so much worse.
Yeah, but at that point, it's like, well, 1 out of 20 or whatever is fine. So it's whatever. I'll forgive it.
It's going to happen at some point, and maybe it's this time, maybe it's later. Who knows?
Well, that's the thing. We're not saying like if I don't like what this does with this story, the next issue, it's not like one weaker issue out of however many. It's specifically one weaker follow-up issue where previously he's had questionable cliffhangers that have turned out to be great. It's a really specific metric. So even 1 out of 3 on that scale is not bad, actually, all things considered.
Yeah, it's such a unusual, I don't want to say complaint, but critique. Because it's very rare that I'm so cautious about a cliffhanger and then it completely wins me over. And even rarer that I can do it like twice in a row. Maybe 3 times. We'll see soon.
Maybe 3. We'll see. But I mean, the action, of course, was good. It wasn't as because I like the second issue of this, which was the car chase and the Bat family like coming in one by one. Like I thought the action in that issue was phenomenal and the way it was drawn and the sequencing. I think,
obviously, we had Jimenez doing quite a bit on Batman during time stuff, but he does such a great Gotham. That, I'm enjoying having him back again.
There was just lots of really good action set pieces that were really well laid out, and I felt like the big moments playing off. This one doesn't have as many of them, or because we're kind of doing different things. But like I say, that cut to them lying on the floor as the other League members are fighting was a good moment, and it's like another example of just how well structured. And I'm assuming this is also on Zdarsky as a writer as well, that he's kind of setting this up for Jimenez to.
I actually really like Jimenez's Superman as well. Like the very first panel of the book, it looks like an older Superman, not like really old, obviously, but like slightly older than what we maybe typically see, but with his kind of rougher lines that Jimenez have that kind of plays really well with the colors in this book. But we don't tend to see it with characters like Superman. I think it looks really good.
Yeah. The whole angry dad thing at the start as well, and the narration was a neat touch. Yeah. So no, I mean, I enjoyed the issue. I once again, I'm saying that I don't know how I feel about what this issue does towards the end, but we'll see. Obviously, there's a backup as well, which is also by Zdarsky, and this is basically the ZNR, or I think it's called ZNR Year 1 or Failsafe Year 1. But it's basically this idea of when ZNR first started appearing. It kind of ends at this point where is the Joker aware, and is the Joker kind of like become more unhinged because he knows Batman's more unhinged now at the end? That's kind of how it wraps up. I wouldn't say there's too much of a story. It's a little bit kind of scattershot of like Batman's mind thinking about like who he is and what's going on right now. But
nice art though for it.
That's good. Yeah, old school vibe, the smaller ears and stuff like that to give it that sense.
Yeah, a little bit Francavilla-esque with the colors. Belair doing the colors there, I see, but I think she's doing a good job of like replicating that feel that you get from that sort of story.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't really have much to say about it, but I did like the moment where he's with Gordon and he's looking at the photos of like the victims of the laughing gas that the Joker's used, and he notices that there's something wrong with it. He says it's a fake smile, and you sort of get the sense that the ZNR Batman's like the one in control, or is starting to creep through, and I kind of like the feeling of that towards the end of it. But I don't have too much to say on it as a whole. It's just there's not a lot in it, and it's like 8 pages or whatever it is.
No, it's the sort of thing that maybe as a whole, once there's a couple of parts to it, it might feel like a decent chunk. But as is, it is a bit too short to really get anything in any meat in it.
Yeah. All right, what are you rating Batman?
I think I'll give it an 8, just about. I think 7.5 would have been there, but I think the art kind of just not pushed it up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give it an 8 as well. Like I say, some trepidations about the direction at the end, but it's still very enjoyable and good art and sequencing. So, yeah, good stuff. All right. Gotham City Year 1, Issue 1, Tom King writing with Phil Hester on the art. So this is the next mini-series from Tom King. And I do love the idea of Gotham 1 getting a Year 1, or Gotham City getting a Year 1. Gotham 1. Yeah, and I wasn't really sure exactly what this was going to be. We obviously had to solicit when it was first came out and stuff, but this...
We kind of knew Slam Bradley, right?
Yeah, we knew Slam Bradley was going to be like kind of lead character here. We get this story that does bring in the Waynes. Richard Wayne, which is Bruce's grandfather, and his wife Constance are characters in here as well. And it teases at the start that there's some mystery going on about why they're not like revealing their baby to the public too much. Like they've been kind of reclusive with their daughter. And Slam is introduced at his office. This woman comes in, kind of under mysterious circumstances, saying she's got an envelope for him to deliver and money to pay him. It's not from her. Like she's doing this on the behalf of someone else, and she gives her name as Sue, but doesn't really give much else. And notably, this is the 60s, and there's a lot of talk later on in the issue about the black areas of Gotham City, and this woman is black, so worth mentioning that here at the start. What threw me off here at the start here, and I guess it makes sense now with the timeline, but it started off by saying it's 1962 or something like that. 1961. And I'm like, man, these moving timelines of comic books are like, because I'm just so used to like, like if you tell me like what time period would you say Bruce's grandfather was like, I would have been like turn of the century. That was my first statement. But obviously, if you're thinking about it in present day times and like what age Bruce is supposed to be now, and you sort of work your way back, yeah, by now, yeah, maybe the 60s is all right.
Yeah, I mean, I typically think of Bruce as kind of early 50s.
He'd be younger than that if we were in 61 with his grandfather, before his father's even an adult.
Yeah, I suppose it'd have to be.
Because there's no mention of Richard having a son here, so I don't know if Thomas is even born yet.
Okay, because 50s would take you back to what, like 70s?
Yeah, early 70s.
Yeah.
It's only 10 years before that.
I guess, yeah, I guess I expect Bruce to be a bit older than that. Like, that feels like a very young Bruce in this continuity then.
Yeah.
Bruce can't be older than 30, really, at this point, then, surely.
Yeah, I would say. Which, I mean, I think technically New 52 did establish something like that, but obviously the timeline was wonky because he's had 4 Robins in the space of 5 years or something stupid like that.
Yeah. Like, this feels like it's skewing back towards a younger Bruce than I think of, but...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if anything, I would have said 61 would have sounded right for a Thomas Wayne story. That's what I would have thought. I would have thought 61 would have been a Thomas Wayne story, and a Richard Wayne story would be like back in the 30s or something like that.
Yeah, 30s or 40s would have been my immediate reaction to where this would be set.
That's it, though. I don't think there was any reference to Thomas Wayne existing. I mean, maybe he's off at college or something. Maybe it's just skewing a bit different than what I think it is. But anyway, so he thinks it's weird, but he gets his assistant, old Johnny, to Taylor and find out where she came from and see if there's more to this. But he takes the money, he takes the job, and he goes to the Wayne Manor. The art here is fantastic. Hester's art works really well here. There's a lot of flat colors, a lot of muted yellows, tans, browns, and things to give you the sense of the time period. When he's in his office, like, it's mostly, again, very earthy tones, white backgrounds with grays and browns and yellows. Like, there's a very specific color scheme to this, and it gives it the time period down. So when he goes to the mansion, he's basically accosted by the head of security, who's actually an old cop that he used to know when he was on the force, and they sort of rough him up a little bit to the point where after he meets Constance Wayne, he's taken down to a basement area and beat to shit. And it's not until quite late on they even read his. Actually, no. I think they read the letter first. Like, eventually, Richard Wayne shows up and they read the letter first. But ultimately, what's going on here is, it turns out after some questioning, because they're not really telling them what's going on until later on, is that their child's been kidnapped. Their daughter's been kidnapped. And this note was like a second note from whoever's got her with the ransom, saying to give the money to Slam Bradley. He's going to deliver it. Don't call the police, blah, blah, blah. And it matches a note that was left when the baby was taken. It matches a note. And what's notable about the note is that it's signed with a bat symbol, which is probably the only thing in this issue that I don't like, because it's the one thing that made me go, and roll my eyes. So I don't know, like, where they're going with that, especially since Richard starts coining whoever this is the Batman, with a hyphen. So
very prequely, isn't it?
Yeah, up until that point, I was really into this. I was into, okay, all right, yeah, we've got like a kidnapping of a Wayne baby. Slam Bradley's a detective, going to go and find it. We're going to delve into some of the darker side of the history of the city. The idea that you've got the rich neighborhoods and you've got the poor neighborhoods, which some of which are black neighborhoods, and kind of like the attitude of like the rich people try to clear up those parts of the city, but the unsaid part being to get rid of the people that are there. Part of the background plot is that Richard Wayne's building a factory in the south side of Gotham where the poor areas are. So there's all this like mythology stuff and like city building in the background that I actually really like, and I really like the Slam Bradley stuff. I'm still into the plot. I'm still into the kidnapping plot. It's just this actual bat thing that I'm like, what is this? I don't. What are you doing here, King? And maybe there's going to be a point. Maybe it's going to all make some sense later on. Maybe there's some wonkiness here to Slam's memory, because the sort of, not twist, but the reveal at the end of the issue is that all his narration, he's actually talking to Batman in present day, or I don't know if it's present day continuity, but it's present day. Somewhere when he's Batman. So he's telling this story to Batman as a really old man, and talking about the darkness of the city and all that. And it's basically saying, yeah, you think Gotham broke when you were around, but it broke before you. It broke long before. And he does sort of talk about when he's driving around. Yeah, there's bad parts of the city, but it is kind of like this family neighborhood where everyone sort of still treats each other like they're in a small town. Is that true? Is he right to think that? Or is that just his perspective and he's not really uncovered the true darkness yet? The big thing, though, that makes it a bit murkier is once he's eventually let go, and the Waynes don't necessarily believe that he's innocent, even though he's saying that he is, but the instructions are to make him be the one that delivers the money anyway, so they have to kind of go through with it. And there's some great full-page panels of him walking from the Wayne Manor in the rain. It's very moody, very pulpy. But probably the most pulpy thing is when he gets back to his office and it's all red and black, kind of like the nighttime lights with just the red street lights on the outside to give you that drama, again, very noir style tone. He gets a phone call, and the phone call is that his assistant that he sent tailing Sue, the woman that delivered the letter in the first place, he's turned up dead. He's like been dumped in like some cement or something, and he's been shot with Slam's own gun that he gave him for protection when he went out to follow her. So now the cops are like, where were you all day? Your guy just showed up dead with your own gun, and he can't tell them because he's been told by the Waynes not to tell the police about anything that's going on because the kidnappers will kill the kid. So he's found himself in this weird position where he's responsible for saving this kid now, and no one on any side trusts him. So it's kind of like a really hard done by kind of story. And this all plays out like in the work site where they're going to build this factory. And there's the big sort of billboard saying, "Coming soon to Southside, the Wayne Industrial Refinery, the future of Gotham." Which I always enjoy. It's like a very Back to the Future, and even like dark with the nuclear power plant. This like, oh, there's like some sort of landmark in the city we're going to use to like be this central point for everything. But yeah, the last page is like super old Slam Bradley, you know, talking about this. He says he sounds just like his grandfather, which implies that he knows who Batman is, which is worth mentioning, because he says, you sound just like your grandfather, and, you don't look back, you don't look back to what was before you, kind of thing. There's truth, there's secrets. Gotham fell before you ever got here, which is a really cool line. This idea that, and it was always kind of known, that's always kind of true. Like, Batman became Batman because the city was already corrupt and gone to shit. So, yeah. But yeah, the last line is just him looking at Batman saying, you don't know a damn thing. To be continued. So I really like the story. I really like the mystery that's setting up. The only thing I don't like is the idea of the kidnapper using this bat symbol, which does make me wonder if there is going to be some sort of weird other element to it, like whether it's time travel or whether it's I don't know, or maybe like Slam's like not a trustworthy narrator or something like that. But the fact that Batman's here to listen to this story implies that there's something to learn specific, and maybe it ties into what this this kidnapper who used this symbol. But I certainly wouldn't have thought it was going to be a time travel story of any kind, but that bat symbol definitely makes me kind of hope that it is, or something akin to it, because otherwise it's just so on the nose and prequely that I'll hate that in retrospect. For now, I'll see where it's going, because the mood and the tone and the characters and all the Slam Bradley detective stuff is all great. And the art is like perfect for it. The art is, I can't compliment it enough. Lots of flat colors, like I said, but also lots of flat shadows. The panel where he's looking down at his dead friend and the cement, like the rain's like pouring down on him, so you get like the drips coming off his hat, but the shadow completely covers his eyes, so you don't actually get to see his eyes in this shot. It's like so moody, and like you really get that kind of pulpy noir, but also mixed with maybe a little of David Fincher's Seven, in terms of like just how sinister it feels and how kind of hopeless the world feels around him. So I really dig that. So needless to say, like, I'm not surprised to come out of this going, I'm definitely reading issue 2, because it was another good Tom King book. But there is that one element that I might not like, depending on what it does with it. Either if it stays muted enough, I won't let it ruin things for me, or if there's a good reason for it that actually isn't just a coincidence, then cool.
It really does play on the sort of, from what it sounds like at least, these sort of prequel elements to books on media in general that you specifically really dislike.
I mean, it's just that one thing, because everything with the city and like the idea of the city, like how it became corrupt originally, is an interesting thing to just talk about, and like, okay, and also the idea that Slam Bradley's the character we're following, because that's who Detective Comics was about before Batman, and that's kind of a neat little sort of way to weave it into, whether this in continuity or just like its own thing, is another question, which I'll answer maybe by the end of it. But I do like exploring of this time period of Gotham. I think it's interesting, and I don't think having a kidnap plot where Richard has to get his daughter back, and it feels forced into the history of the Waynes, because before Thomas Wayne, everything's just kind of up for, other than the fact that they're a rich family that moved to the city and helped found it. It's like everything's fair game.
All you need, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I did really like it otherwise, though. I'm just a little concerned about this bat symbol shenanigans.
Makes sense.
On the ransom letters and stuff. So, depending on who this villain turns out to be and like why they're doing it and what's going on, will sort of dictate how I appreciate some of the answers in the story. But I cannot deny it is a very well crafted comic book. Not that I'm surprised at this point, but really good stuff. So I'll give it a 9, because I do think it's a great comic book. There's just that one story detail that could become a problem as time goes on. But it was overwhelmingly very, very good otherwise. So there you go. That's that. Alright, next up, The Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing, issue 1. Matthew Rosenberg writing, with Carmine D. Giandomenico on the art. And so, confession, you weren't here. I actually never read the last 2 issues of Task Force Z.
Did you drop off it?
It was kind of a happenstance thing. It was just like I didn't have time for the issue 11 the week, and then when issue 12 came out, I'd forgotten to go back and read it. So that was this 2 issue like job when I had other books to read. So I never quite finished. I know that there was, you know, all sorts of crazy shenanigans going on. I know Two-Face was left in a fair bit of power and all the rest, which is obviously kind of implied in here. But yeah, obviously you have Rosenberg, who's been writing some characters on the Gotham world recently, and you know, it's interesting to see Giandomenico jump over to this after being on The Night. Just
yeah.
there.
And we saw him on some Batman stuff in the past, very briefly, I think. Maybe one of the crossover things.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't really. I didn't really look into what this book was too much. I'll give it a go based on the creators and see what it is.
The hot new Joker book. Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts with, you know, Joker, you know, kidnaps this, you know, mob boss seemingly, right? You know, we don't get a good look at them. We just sort of get this impression of the people around them at this dinner table that's been, you know, body parts have been put in the food. The Joker's in the kitchen, all wacky Joker shenanigans, all that stuff. And then we see him, like, you know, beating them up, and like, they've all got hoods in their heads. But Two-Face and Riddler and Black Mask show up and basically, like, Joker, no one wants you back in Gotham. Why don't you just go? Just, you know, make a
Riddler's got a massive staff now.
A massive staff that's, you know, is question mark shaped to an extent. It's basically a straight staff with just the curve at the top to give it the.
It's got a big hook. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like the bosses in Gotham now. They want Joker to be gone. And Joker, kind of surprisingly, ultimately agrees. There is kind of a funny moment here. There's a darkly funny moment where our main character, who's narrating, who we don't know really who it is, in the suit with the hood over his head, says, "Oh, you know, it seems silly, but I think I may actually survive this." And then Black Mask goes, "Hey, what about this one guy you've left alive?" And Joker goes, "Oh yeah, him," and then just shoots him in the head. That was mildly funny. You know, I can't fault that. But then things get weird because then he wakes up when there's two, like, lackeys. Yeah, a couple of days later, there's two lackeys, like, disposing of the body, and then he wakes up and is alive for some reason. So he's walking around with this, like, hood on his head for the rest of the issue until the obviously the reveal at the end. While Joker's in LA, he wants to take over California and maybe all the cities around the world, all the country. He goes on TV and makes his announcement. He pushes the LA mob boss out of his, you know, skyrise to his death. As our hooded mysterious figure goes back to Arkham Asylum. It's, you know, like, I wasn't sure how to feel about a lot of this plot. Like, I was just kind of like, okay, Joker's going and doing stuff in LA, and it's a different setting for him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how did you feel about any of this?
I did not love this book. I'm not gonna lie to you. There was a lot of it where the disconnect with the narration and kind of following, you know, this mysterious hooded kind of victim, and then just seeing all the Joker stuff. It didn't, like, necessarily line up all that well for me.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, like, what I was feeling. I was feeling a little conflicted about it. There was, like, little moments. I was like, oh, that's a neat little moment or idea or things like that. But
yeah,
I kind of. It was funny because the reveal at the end, which is kind of like, wait, what's going on here? Is that the hooded figure is also the Joker? That's the end of the issue.
Yeah, is this a secret Three Jokers sequel?
I don't know. I mean, I know obviously Task Force Z was, like, resurrecting people, which maybe explains how he died and came back potentially here.
But then is the other one really of the Joker, or
yeah,
you know? Yeah.
And if so, which one is the real Joker?
That's a fair question.
You know, there's levels to this. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to read any more of this. There's some intriguing ideas in here, but it definitely feels like just an overcomplicated Joker story that, well, I do like Carmine Giandomenico and on certain books, I don't necessarily think he fits every book. And I think, well, you might think, oh, the wacky lines, the way he sort of draws things in that sketchy format might work for someone like the Joker. I don't think it works for the sort of Joker book that I like. In the same way that a Harley Quinn book, you've got your Cedric Harley Quinn book, and then you've got your ongoing, like, just comedy book. Not that this is just a comedy book, but it's kind of veering towards that in the way it looks, because it's more lighthearted and it's more comical, as opposed to being a Joker who's a bit more scary, which is what I kind of like a bit more.
Like, I think there is a Giandomenico Joker book that can work, but I think Giandomenico works best with action sequences.
And
that's not to say he's bad at, positioning characters in a room talking, because he's not. It's just not where he excels. Yeah,
and there's not a lot of action scenes in this. So the guy getting kicked out the window is maybe the only big moment of action.
Yeah, because Giandomenico's strength is in his motion, right? The flow of what's happening in a scene. And I don't think this book has much flow. I think it's very disjointed.
Yeah, there's like a montage over 2 pages of like different places in LA or different cities around the country being like attacked by Joker cronies because he's taken over everywhere. And like Harley seen it on the news and stuff like that. And it's a bit weird because it's kind of like if he was taking over like attacks in multiple cities like this, I feel like not only would Batman get involved, I feel like you might even like get like an entire Justice League involved, just stopping all this shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the end of the issue is the masked man who turns out to be a Joker like goes into a bathroom and like kills the guy that's in there. And I will say this though, it did explain something that I did have a problem with before. Because I did think the narration text, the lettering, was a little too Jokery looking, and it was confusing me early on why the narration wasn't the Joker. And then when you get to the end, it's like, oh, he's also a Joker. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, because it did feel very Jokery as well. There's the bit, I think it's when he wakes up and he talks about the joke of, first thing you got to do is make sure he's dead. You hear the gunshot, which felt like a really Joker thing to reference.
Yeah,
like this kind of really kind of stupid joke that everyone's heard that's not actually funny, really, because you've heard it so many times. But obviously the Joker would put some sick twist on it, right?
I mean, it would make sense to me that the hooded one's the real Joker and the other one's not, because he leaves Gotham pretty much when he's asked to, and because this whole expanding and being like a crime empire all over the country feels like that's someone else using Joker's like mystique.
And he says he's going to clean up cities, right?
Yeah.
That's his speech. It doesn't feel very Joker. And like I said, I don't know if it's an imposter, if it's supposed to be like a Three Jokers sort of sequel. I don't know quite what's going on there.
Right now, I'm leaning towards some other criminal using the Joker's likeness to, take over, and maybe thought he'd get away with killing the Joker, but clearly, Lazarus or whatever has happened. Lazarus just brought him back or something.
Yeah, there's always Lazarus juice.
Yeah, I don't know, but I wasn't really feeling it all that much either. So much so that even though it was Francavilla on the art, I got to the backup and went, you know what? I don't even want to.
I did the same. I was like, I do like Francavilla. I flicked through it just to glance at the Francavilla art because always gorgeous. I did see the ape, the gorilla in like the Superman thing with the Shakespeare collar with a Tommy gun, and I'm like, I kind of want to know what's going on there, but also not enough to read it, like not enough to actually go through it because I was not feeling the main book, and I think it was just Rosenberg again, right?
It was Rosenberg again, yeah.
Yeah, so I was not like really excited to.
Yeah, I it's a shame. Because like I've liked some of Rosenberg's work. I've liked one or two of the minis that he's done at Marvel as well. But he does seem to very much depend on what characters he's doing or just what the concept is, really. This feels like a really weird concept and maybe plays out, but I just wasn't necessarily feeling it as I was reading it. I was kind of like, this was the book I read out of all the new books I read this week, which was a bit of a chore. And I wasn't super into Deadly Green either, but I was like, this felt a bit of a chore to get through this one, honestly.
Yeah, for me, with time, it came down to this or Gotham City Year One. And obviously my track record with Tom King lately has been not so hot. So I thought I'll give this one a shot instead, thinking maybe maybe I've got more of a chance of enjoying it. Ultimately, I don't know if that's true because I probably would have enjoyed at least the Phil Hester art more than Giandomenico on this particular book.
I think you would have, enjoyed the art more.
Yeah. Again, we do usually like Giandomenico, just not necessarily the right script for him here in this issue.
No. So there you go. What are you giving Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing, issue 1?
3 or 4, which sounds really harsh, but I think it's a below average book.
It's maybe a bit hard. I'll give it a 5. Like, there's moments in here that I thought were amusing or little ideas or whatever, but just a bit of a chore overall. And I had no interest of reading more.
Yeah,
even the backup I didn't want to read. Never mind the next issue.
Terrible, but I'm not sure how many people are going to love this book.
That's fair. All right. We'll go out to some Patreon books. Every month at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, you can make myself or Connor read a book. Now, Connor's been gone for a little bit, so he's got some catching up to do. So he's got 3 books here he's going to talk about. He's skipping ahead on one of them. The first one he's going to talk about here is Tim Drake Robin issue 1. Because it's new, and it means he can... Because he didn't want to do like 2 Harley Quinn issues in 1 week, because they just sort of blur together, and it wouldn't be a fair review. But he can skip ahead and do the Tim Drake issue quite happily. So yeah, Tim Drake Robin issue 1. Take it away.
Yeah, it's Megan Fitzmartin writing, who did the Tim Drake stuff.
And on Urban Legends, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe even some stuff in Future State as well, going back that far. I think she's kind of been dabbling with Tim for a while now. And
of course, your favourite artist.
Yes, the reason why I am being forced to read this, because I was really excited at first when I heard I was getting a Tim Drake book. Because, as people know, Tim Drake's my favorite Robin. And then they threw Rosmo on art.
I'm not a joker that stopped laughing right now, I'll tell you that.
The first 2 pages, I didn't recognize Tim.
Oh, really? Oh.
I did not realize it was Tim. He's obviously in his civvies. I'm not saying Rosmo's bad enough that I wouldn't recognize Tim in his Robin outfit, because Rosmo may have some stylistic choices I don't agree with, but at least characters are usually recognizable in their outfits. But I just thought there was like it's Tim walking around the harbor in Gotham. He's walking around some old boats and doing some stuff, but it's at night it's just this guy walking around the docks, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And there's narration over the top of it, a lot of narration actually. Probably too many narration boxes to critique the writing here. It wasn't until the bottom of the second page where Bernard showed up, the boyfriend character that it kind of introduced in that Urban Legend stuff, I think it was.
Is that how you pronounce Bernard?
I've known people that go by Bernard, yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Did you never watch Bernard's Watch?
I have never heard of this.
The British kids TV show with a kid called Bernard who has a stopwatch that stops time.
Sounds like a little wanker. Continue.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, basically. But until he showed up outside interacting with Tim, I was like, oh, that's Tim. Because at first I thought it was just some guy being suspicious wandering around the docks, and I thought the narration was going to be about what was going on, but no, it was Tim, and I just didn't recognize him, which was not the best start for the book. Let's put it that way. But the premise of the book is Tim's he's bought a shitty little rundown boat to live on. It's a tiny little boat that there's a couple of pages that have some really interesting panel layouts that I like in premise. I don't think it comes off entirely well, but I like the idea of it from Rosmo here. I'll give him that, where it's kind of like a cross section of the boat, and you see from the side, and you see some of it like underwater as well, and you see it's cut away, and you see the inside, the layout of how it's set up to be Tim's home. With the it goes downstairs, and you see all the stuff. So like that parts of it are under the water, as a boat would be. It's a nice idea, and it's mostly just setting up where Tim's life is right now for the first half of the book. Kind of this, okay, he's living on this boat. we're setting up all his neighbors who also live on boats in this little dock.
As you do.
And they're a strange collection of characters. I'm not even going to get into them all because I don't think it ultimately doesn't matter that much. They're just there's a 2-page no 2-page. There's just like a big panel kind of going through a bunch of them. There's like the only one I can remember was called Tuna because it was called Tuna, so that was slightly memorable.
Big tuna.
Yeah, that was my first thought as well. The only other two slightly memorable ones are these two women who I couldn't tell you their names, but they're the first ones that are introduced to. They get a full like scene interacting with Tim, whereas the others just get like a, this is just who they are, little narration boxes. And also those are the two that end up murdered slightly later in the issue. So that's why they're slightly more memorable, because they are the plot. They seemed, one of them's decapitated, one of them's like stuffed in like an oil barrel drum sort of thing. Basically, it turns out that there's this plot where Tim's got some detective that he calls in that he knows. Again, I think a lot of this is harkening back to some of this urban legend stuff, maybe, that I've obviously didn't read much of. I read the first one, I think. But I'm assuming that's what all this is, because it references a lot of things that I think is not the best start for a book. I think in issue 1, I think there's a lot of stuff here that it references in that urban legends. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I may very well be, there was not a collected one-shot of all the urban legend stuff published alongside this, in the same way that the Asriel one had the 3 parts kind of that urban legends collected.
Actually, I think they did it already. Like, I'm pretty sure before the Asriel one, there was already a Tim Drake one that was reprinting. It was like the 3 parts to the story plus like 1 extra bonus story was a one-shot. Okay.
Was that quite a few months before this then?
Oh, it was a while ago, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the mistake. I think they should have saved it and done it, if not like the same week as, but at most a month before, maybe even just a week before. Because the Asriel one, they were on the same day, and it was really easy to go, hey, you want to pick both of these up?
I think they might have done it for Pride Month, I want to say.
Pride Month was June, I want to say that was. June or July.
That sounds like it might be right.
Yeah. I think that's just a weird combination of a mistake on DC's part. If they knew this book was coming, I think they should have saved it and done that better. And then a critique of Fitzmartin's writing here, and that I don't think it's that accessible. I think there's a lot of referencing back to this other stuff that feels essential to have read, and I felt a little bit alienated having not read it. And I think that's kind of a mistake in any issue 1. I think really. Because at least with that Asriel one, you could kind of treat it as a 0 issue, and like, I think maybe they should have named it as a 0 issue, but this here, it felt missing, because this case that's happening, this is murder. He's looking at all the pieces, and he puts together that it's actually a recreation of one of the earliest detective stories by Edgar Allan Poe. And then he talks about how he dealt with one of these already, someone recreating, I think it was a Sherlock Holmes story. And it was, I think that was in the urban legend stuff or the Pride special. If that was separate, I'm not sure. And it talks about, oh yeah, I did this. I know what's going on here. And he just kind of goes off and solves it kind of quickly because he knows exactly what he's looking for. And I kind of felt a bit out of the loop here by jumping in, in the first issue, jumping into this thing that was already established in something that I don't think everyone will have read. Maybe that'll be included in the trade for this long term. I think it probably should be. But for anyone who maybe just saw, hey, there's a new issue 1 on Comixology this week, I like Tim Drake. Yeah, I think this is a real problem, because it felt like there was a lot of context missing. I think it worked okay with the Bernard stuff, kind of establishing that relationship, because the the early part of this is him going, well, do I call him boyfriend? You know, is that where we are? Like, so there was enough there that it kind of felt okay, but it talked about, you know, it mentioned Tim having an injury recently. But it didn't give any context. There wasn't even an editor's note for that as to where to find information on that. Which I thought was weird, because I'm like, I don't actually know what exactly that's referring to.
It's difficult because
things.
It's difficult because they're doing this spinning out of something they've already done, and it's a bit ballsy to put an issue 1 out. And obviously, you could rewrite it to like serve more for new people as well, which is maybe what you're supposed to do in the first place. But I could also see it being really off-putting if you open the first page of an issue 1 and it says, this is a follow-up to this series of stories that you can go buy as well.
I mean, but the thing is, those editor's notes are in there. There is one that references the Pride special. There's one that references, here's, you know, it was in Urban Legends 4 to 6. So they're in there anyway. And again, I'm not saying have none of these things. I'm not saying don't set this as a spin-off to that book. I just think it could have been written more accessibly, and it could have felt a bit more natural and inviting to newcomers. But the ending is, you know, Tim solved that crime, kind of. Like, he doesn't catch the guy who does it, but he you know, there's a big gorilla, orangutan, I think it is, with a, you know, this disc, and he knows, you know, this is why he knows what to fix, because, you know, this happened before with an elephant, I think it was, in the other one, where he has to smash this disc and then finish the story in some way. So, you know, that's what he does, and it resolves really quickly, but he doesn't catch the person who's behind it. And at the very end, he's back in his boat home, and there's a package on his table with a little note saying, you know, clever work today, until next time, Gumshoe, you know, presumably from whoever is behind it. So it's setting up its mystery there. And I think that stuff, like, it's starting to work nicely in terms of where it's going. I just think it really introduces it in a clunky way for newcomers. And that is my biggest problem with this book on a writing stance. Art-wise, yeah, it's Rosmo. I just dislike it vehemently. It is not to my tastes. I don't think he has any particularly bad layouts in this issue. I was once or twice, I thought there was some poor lettering choices in terms of where narration boxes were, and was following the flow, and I was reading them in the wrong order. I don't know how much of that is the art not leading me nicely, or just poor placement from the letterer. So I'm not sure who to blame for those specifically. I know there was at least one instance where Rosmo's art did have to be connected in a series like pop-up circles, and was connected with lines, and they had to actually number them like 1 through 5 to make sure you read them in the right order, which is always a concerning sign for me, because if you have to number it to make sure I read it in the right way, even when they're connected with lines going through, you're clearly not confident people are going to read them right, and that's maybe a telling sign something's wrong for me. But it's not Rosmo's most offensive work in terms of the stuff that I can usually complain about is like more objective things. I just stylistically still really don't like it. But, you know, for Rosmo's fans, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, I can't say I'm particularly fond of his big fat head characters either.
Yeah. Big chins.
Not even just fat heads, it's more like lopsided. It's like they've got
They're such strangely shaped, aren't they? But yeah, it's not the worst book, but also I think it is damn near essential you have read the previous stuff. Otherwise, you are missing a lot, and it feels weird. I'll probably give it a 4 overall.
Oh, wow. Well, you're not done yet, because you got a couple of Harley Quinn to catch up on as well. Also from David, who's torturing you with that. Yes. So this is still a Rosmo issue, I think. Harley Quinn 16.
Yeah. More Rosmo.
Yeah, 2 Rosmo issues this week.
Yeah, and I've read them back to back because I forgot to save things to put in between them. It was, yeah.
I think that's on
nice.
you. I think that
it kind of is on me. Yeah, I didn't really plan my books in advance. I was just trying to get through them, and I went, oh shit! Now I've got 2 Rosmos. That was not a fun half hour, let me tell you.
You're like, I must have been in hospital last week. Can I go back to hospital, please?
It was a more enjoyable experience all round, I think. But yeah, Harley Quinn, 16. Obviously, Philip's not. This is like 2/3 of this is a flashback origin story for Sam, whose villain's name I'm completely forgetting. It was like Guilty something. Final. I don't know. I don't remember the villain's name. I know her name is Sam. I just don't remember a secret identity. Because I don't think it even says it at any point really in this issue. If it does, I'm just missing over it because she's not in costume for this issue. To be fair, the flashback is basically it's in Harley's younger days, back when she was still, evil, back in the jester outfit. And it was Sam as a cop. Harley's been arrested, and they've got a transfer duty, taking her to Arkham. And unsurprisingly, on the way, Harley breaks free and crashes the van, and it kills Sam's partner when in the crash. And she's very suspicious because, like, hey, she was checked, she was clean, she was in handcuffs. How did she possibly get out? And is kind of putting it together that, something's not right here. And then she overhears, one of her bosses kind of talking, being like, yeah, we're sticking to the story. She got a bit of a concussion, so we're kind of playing it off with her. So there's no need to go any further. But basically, overhears that, yeah, it was a payoff. The Joker paid them off to get Harley out, basically, before she got to Arkham, while it was easier to escape. And Sam in hospital kind of goes to the other guy who was in the van who survived, but was basically gets double the payout now because not everyone did, and goes and just chokes him in the hospital. And that's her villain origin, and why she hates Harley so much, because Harley inadvertently killed her partner, or indirectly, by causing the crash. And that, and she's like, oh no, she's a murderer, and now she's here and all free, and yeah, whatever. It's I don't care about any of this stuff. I don't think she's been a particularly good villain. I didn't think I didn't think the reveal was that good. It was kind of really obvious who she was the whole time. I don't think this is a particularly unique origin. It's fine. Surrounded by a lot of really rough Rosmo art. And I say it's 2/3 that. The other third is just kind of some present day scenes of Sam and Kevin kind of talking and going through this, because she's telling the story to Kevin, to try and explain things, and Kevin's like, I still think we're going to have to go to the police and turn you in. And Sam's calling him a hypocrite because he used to work for the Joker, and and now, yeah, sure, he's reformed now, but he was actively on board with Joker's evil shit, whereas Sam has at least always been against that. And then Harley just shows up, and the final page is Sam seemingly shooting Harley. And by that, I mean it shows her pulling out a gun and shooting it in Harley's direction, but we don't actually see anything. I'm assuming, for dramatic irony's sake, that she shot Kevin by mistake, because she does seemingly actually care for Kevin. So that will be the obvious twist, not even twist, but the obvious resolution to this is that Kevin got in the way of the bullet, and Sam will feel guilty that now she's responsible for killing someone she cares about. And yeah, I can already see where that's going. But yeah, it's not a good issue again. Rosmo has a lot of really slanted panels. I don't know what it is about Rosmo, especially in this Harley book. I don't know if he thinks it makes it feel a little bit kooky, kind of just gives it that off-kilter feeling to make it feel like a Harley book. But instead of just straight boxes, there's just a lot of tilted angles, and they don't serve any effect. They just make it slightly more uncomfortable to read. it's really irritating. Yeah. I'm so glad I've only got to get through one more of these, I think, or two. I don't know. Not that many, but I'll give it probably a 3.5.
Oh, well. Well, I'll go to my Patreon book that I'm doing this week then. This is Animal Man issue 24. And it's all popping off. It's been getting more and more meta. In fact, once again, this issue begins with, there's like panels of a keyboard, a computer keyboard, and the text kind of like describes what Psycho Pirate's feeling, and then it goes into it. Animal Man showed up at the end with the alien last time, just as Ultraman and Overman and everything else that was going on in Arkham was kicking off. The best way I can kind of describe this is that there's a bit of a debate about what reality is, and that they're being just written by people from another universe, or potentially they're still got free will, but there's people from another universe watching in some way. They even refer to readers as gods at one point, if that's what they are, or at the very least, obviously the creators are gods. But Overman's got the Purification Day bomb that he wants to set off and destroy everything. So there's a bit of a Ultraman's trying to stop him. Where this gets really interesting and wacky is Animal Man chooses to jump into the white light. The white light being kind of the gateway to outside the comic panels. And when he starts to sort of interact with Overman, who's kind of the villain of the issue, he taps him on the shoulder from outside the panel, which is a really sort of kooky effect, because it's kind of, he's like, Overman's arm ends at the edge of the panel like he's inside the panel, like normal. And it wouldn't be weird if it didn't, because, comic panels often will have people sticking out of panels as part of just, artsy, fun, effectively. So it's a usual technique. But what makes this really weird is that his arm is cut off by the end of the panel, but it overlaps Animal Man's arm, which is coming in from outside the panel, which I think has been deliberately done to make it really stick out and point out what they're doing here, that makes it feel like Animal Man's coming in from outside the comic panel. So it's a very deliberate choice. I think even not only just to have both things there and not have them sticking out of the panel like sometimes you do in comics, but to actually have it overlap the arm of Animal Man that's coming in from outside the panel. But you see Animal Man like that through this page, like sort of like he's kind of like walking past the panels in the white in the background. It kind of so that's where it gets really fun and starts to really play with things. At one point, he's like leaning on top of the panel on the next page, looking down at what's going on. And then Overman pulls him down and tries to pull him into the panel. And as this is all happening, Psycho Pirate's fading away. Some of the other characters are turning white. And ultimately, all these characters go away by the end of the issue, or most of them do anyway. And it kind of feels like this is tying into like Animal Man getting over the death of his family, because it's kind of this ultimate sentiment of, yeah, it's really sad that these characters are going away because of crisis erasing them. But those books that we're in will always exist. You'll always have the memories. And every time someone reads one of those books, they'll live again. It kind of feels like Grant Morrison saying goodbye to a lot of weird characters that he liked that got erased. So that's the meta side to the story, but also how it ties into the themes of what Animal Man's going through with his wife and kids being dead. So, like, it's a really interesting, wacky concept. It does have a little bit of dramatic weight to it, but there's some great panels of Animal Man pulling Overman out of the panel into the white, and then there's a couple of pages where they're in the white. And what's really interesting is that there's like a sort of ghostly extra figure in the white seemingly helping Animal Man by pulling on Overman and things like that. But it's really good. Then ultimately he beats Overman by putting him in a comic panel that closes, like it keeps getting smaller, and Overman's like trapped inside it, and then it just sort of closes shut and becomes like nothing. Just as like everything else seems to be going away. And then ultimately Dr. Highwater, who's the one who started noticing these things, it puts on the Psycho Pirate mask and is kind of the one who's there to keep an eye on it, because the mask is now this conduit to the real world and creation and all the different universes and all that stuff. So he's like the new Psycho Pirate by the end of this, or at least wearing the mask. But there's even a sort of a joke to the bomb going off where it's counting down and the aliens think, oh, maybe it is actually going to go off. Maybe we can't stop it. And Animal Man just walks up and turns it off. He literally just switches the off button. Or the on button off. You know what I mean? You know what I was getting at. So really wild, but like there's actually kind of the sadness is like Psychopirate's like still kind of there like a ghost almost, and he's fading away, and he basically just says, "Oh, it was nice, wasn't it, to see all those old characters again, just one last time, just like I'd remembered them." And it's just kind of this, it really felt like it was going into the idea of comparing these characters and the loss of characters through continuity. Because at one point, one of them even yells out, "Oh, we're still in continuity," or something like that. Like these words are actually being inserted into the plot. So it's actually kind of sad when Psycho Pirate goes away, even though he's not necessarily like a likable character. There's kind of a tragedy to him here that feels like it means something. You really feel like Grant Morrison's like coping through their sense of loss at what's been written out of the universe because of Crisis. So little would they know that over the next 30 years we'd be going back and forth and doing this over and over again and bringing things back and putting things back out of continuity again and so on and so on. But yeah, so now Highwater's wearing the Psycho Pirate mask, he's in Arkham, and Animal Man's still asking aliens, like, why was I at the center of all this? What was important about me getting involved with all this? And they just sort of say some cryptic things. They repeat what Psycho Pirate said about, these are actors, as I foretold, you were all spirits, and are melted into air. Just kind of like these weird, vague statements about these characters being characters and being like temporary beings of some kind, which in a way can then translate to life because we're all temporary in some way. But they disappear. Shut up. You literally were like nearly dying last week.
It's irrelevant, but I didn't.
Well, we can all have our fingers crossed for next time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, doorbell goes though, and when he opens the door, it's like Earth has changed, and it's like he's in a different dimension or something. There's like, fog and like ancient, like, rocks and monoliths and stuff or something. It says next monkey puzzles, so I don't know if he's in the Monkey Kingdom, where like Monkey Prince is from. I don't know if that's a thing DC had access to at the time, or if that's just what it made me think of. But
I think that's just you connecting modern things.
Yes, so just because I've been seeing him recently in news stories and stuff. Yeah. So I don't know where he's went here at the end, but he's been transported somewhere else. But yeah, so. But yeah, there's like sort of like narration at the end saying, or not even narration, it's like a voice that Buddy's hearing saying, "Buddy, time to go now. Time to put all these worldly things aside. Time for the last adventure." So it feels like it's very much going into the last arc of the run, which I think makes sense because this is going to issue 25 next, and I think it was like 29 or 30 issues, something like that.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So curious to see how this wraps up. Curious to see if Buddy gets some kind of happy ending it, because it's been a really dark book. This last, it's been mixing it with some wacky like meta stuff, but it's been a very dark ever since the family died. It's been a very dark book, and some of that stuff's been my favorite of the whole run. The meta stuff is very interesting, and obviously I think some people really go nuts for it and love that Grant Morrison does this stuff. I am intrigued by it. I've enjoyed sort of like trying to look at it and sort of try and sort of understand what it's saying about the characters in the story, but also kind of the meta like reason for it. But at the same time, I do think it's maybe a touch gimmicky as well.
I can see why you would think that. I think you still haven't got to the. Obviously, it's still building.
Yeah,
you haven't got to the peak of it yet. And I think when that hits, it kind of really comes together in a way that makes it incredibly satisfying.
Okay.
Which makes you look back on it more with, so when people are talking about it, they're talking about it mostly with the knowledge of where it goes and where it peaks. And kind of, as a whole, makes it probably more exciting than the individual kind of moments of it do right now. I
mean, I'm definitely like open to whatever this ending is going to be with it. And I have enjoyed a lot of the moments. But sometimes it does kind of feel like we're doing the wacky meta stuff because we want to do wacky meta stuff. It does sometimes feel like this issue, like comparing it to like what he's going through with the death of his family to the characters disappearing. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see like how this like ties together. and there's a clear reason. So I do hope that it does kind of all click, and when the final point to why we've been doing all this kind of sinks in. And Grant Morrison often does pull those things off. Not always for me, but usually does. So
yeah,
I'm intrigued to see where that goes. But yeah, probably about an 8 out of 10 for me this issue. Very good. So some of the fighting with Overman and Ultraman just felt like it was taking up a few pages to kill time with some action more than anything. But you know,
may have been an editorial kind of demand to have. You know, we need more action.
Which, don't get me wrong, there is a line from I think Psycho Pirate who says, "You're only fighting because that's what they want of you." Right? It's almost like critiquing. It's almost like Grant Morrison's put in like a meta little wink, wink. I was told to put an action scene in here, so I'm going to have the character reference that there has to be an action scene when there's no real reason for you two to fight. Like, so there's like. They maybe did something interesting with it, so fair play. But at the same time, like I still had to go through the few pages of them punching and whatnot. So, but still pretty good though. Still a good issue. All right. So you have one last Patreon book you're going to talk about. Noctera issue 10. Take it away.
Yeah, it's another really solid issue of this book. I think this is a book that suffers slightly monthly. I don't think it's at its best reading monthly. I think it probably reads amazingly well in trade because it's very... Each issue reads really quick. And that can be a good thing in that, you know, it doesn't feel like it drags. You're always enjoying it. But it leaves you wanting more, and you feel like you could probably do with a few extra pages of every issue, which I imagine in trade won't feel like a problem. But this one, it starts with a little dream sequence that kind of turns into a nightmare. It's Piper and kind of it's everyone in the sun. Everything's all good, and then you know they all turn into the like shade-like monsters, and it's pretty horrific. But the main bulk of the issue is they've reached Luna, which is the base where they, you know, the people who Bill used to work for, where they are, and it's there where they turn people into like Bill, you know, where they put all the black stuff on them, you know, and permanently bond them with the nanotech, whatever it is, and kind of make them into the shadow kind of people that they are. And it is mostly just kind of an assault on this base and kind of sneaking how they're going to get in there, using Bill as bait, kind of, you know, because he's obviously got a history with them, which is not good right now, because he, you know, kind of, you know, killed a few of them and maybe kind of burnt some bridges, but they still managed to use him to get in. There's a lot of showdown on the inside, you know. You've got them telling, you know, some of the younger ones like Piper to hang back, you know, stay outside. We're going to get you the coordinates for EOS, which is the bigger base. So Luna's this one where they kind of create the people like Bill. And EOS is the one which is supposedly got like, you know, the sun power stuff. It's like the main one that they really want to fix the world. It's where everything has all gone down. So they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to get you the coordinates, and you know, at least you've got a record of it. But you know, Piper, you know, has to come inside and help anyway, and just, you know, sneaks their way in because that's what they do. But the final point of the issue is they kind of pull the power. They, you know, they use this device, you know, that they'd set up already, and they're like, yeah, that's not going to be great. It's going to probably turn off the kind of pseudo artificial sun that they've got going at the back of this place, and all the megas, which are like, you know, the giant shades and stuff that they've got, like all these horrific sea monsters that's surrounding this base. The sunlight was kind of the only thing keeping them at bay, and now the light's gone, and your final page is them all coming up out of the water. It's all like the, you know, whale-like images, but like kind of twisted and horrific, and just being like, okay, well, that's it now. Shit's hit the fan. How are they going to get out of this? And that, I think the next issue is the final issue of the arc, and that makes sense. I am very interested to see how they get out of this kind of this base that's kind of in the ocean. There's a long bridge over to it, but it's definitively built in the water. This base, So they are surrounded by all these monsters. They couldn't bring their trucks over because there's only one bridge in and out. So they haven't got like an easy escape route to get out of. I would suspect a really strong action issue next to follow up on that. And in some ways, this issue suffers slightly by being the one before the end, where it is kind of like, okay, we're kind of setting you up for that final confrontation, not of the book, but of the arc. And it definitely has that feeling to it of like, oh, we're just kind of preparing for the real issue next time. But it is still very enjoyable. Bill's becoming an even more kind of compelling character. He's, the first arc he was just the straight up villain chasing them. Now we had that one shot on this arc, kind of giving him some depth, some actual backstory, and now seeing him kind of face to face with his past and seeing kind of the consequences of that is kind of pretty fun to watch. Yeah, it's still a really good issue. Probably I'll probably give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's lacking slightly in just in not being quite enough of a full meal, but still very good.
Okay. Well, there you go. That'll take us out of the part of the show. We pick our favourite stuff of the week, favourite panel/moment, favourite cover, favourite art, and top 5 books. Or however many Connor read. What is your moment/panel of the week?
It's obviously from Batman, which isn't surprising, I don't think, because it's like the main book I read.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually just going to go with that very first panel of Superman. I mentioned when we were talking about that book that I really like the way that Jimenez drew kind of that slightly older looking Superman. Yeah, I just really like that image of it.
I think for me, it's there's a couple of things I could maybe put in Dark Races. Batman's got a couple of good moments. I think I have to go with the page in Gotham Year One though, which is probably it's kind of a twofer because it's one page and like half of it is like these panels of him in his office answering the phone call, which are just red and black. But then the other bit at the top is like this more kind of like almost water painted. I think actually it is water paints, but like in terms of the color palette, it looks more water painted. It's like this sort of bright white of him like walking in the night street in the rain. Yeah, which is right after he's leaving the Waynes, which is also a great full page spread of him walking in the rain. But I think the contrast of the red indoor scenes and the panels at the side with the rest of the page is really, really nice. So I'm really going to pick that. Just in terms of this is a mood one. This is one that's just the mood was so strong that I'm picking it. Cover of the week. There's a few interesting ones to pick actually. The regular Batman one's pretty good. There's a Matina variant of Failsafe, which I wouldn't pick this particular one because it's the design of Failsafes, whatever, but it's obviously really high quality work, like is what I'm pointing out. There's also a couple of decent covers for obviously Gotham City Year One's main cover's great, with Hester full pulp. There's also a great variant by Ryan Sook, which is Slam Bradley arriving at the front of the Wayne Manor. My pick for the week though is another Batman variant. It's the Ryan Sook Batman variant, which is Batman, just kind of typical Batman shot where he's up in like a gargoyle or whatever, and there's like bats flying by, and like there's the red moon behind him. Just really nice color palette. Really nice. What's your pick?
Yeah, for me, the only two in contention were the regular Batman cover and the Sook Batman variant that you just talked about. And I'm probably going to go with the Sook variant. But there are some nice covers. I think the main Deadly Green cover is kind of nice. The main Gotham Year One is nice. But those two Batman covers are the only ones that really stood out to me as being a cut above.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, what was your art of the week?
Batman with Jimenez.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Gotham, I picked that too. So I'm picking Phil Hester on Gotham City Year One.
Hester's a great choice. Yeah. Always turns in great work.
All right, rank your books.
So Batman, and then Joker. I think that was kind of all the new ones.
That's the new ones.
I mean, if we're counting Robin as well, though, because that's kind of newish.
That's number 3.
That would actually, I don't actually know
All right, okay.
It would be kind of on par with Joker. Like, for different reasons, I thought they were both. I think I read on both 4s. I probably would put Robin as 3rd, but it's not as obvious as it would have been, like, if on paper, as if you told me, the Rosmo book.
Okay. My number 1 is Gotham City Year 1. Number 2 is, I'll go Batman. Then number 3, I'll go Dark Crisis. Number 4, I'll go Dark Crisis, Daily Green, and number 5, Joker, Man Who Stopped Laughing, which is all the new books I read. But I'll tell you now what's coming out next week from DC Comics. Now, not that we'll be covering them next week, because we won't have a regular episode. We'll have a Q&A episode. Make sure you go and ask the questions over on Twitter. But as luck would have it, it turns out that we'd only have 4 books, so it should actually not be too hard just putting most of them into the following week's episode. Because Wonder Woman 792 is out, but we both me and Matt dropped that. We have been very down on it. Superman Son of Kal-El issue 16 is out. Batman vs. Robin issue 2 is out. Batman Urban Legends issue 20. Batgirls issue 11. Jurassic League issue 6, which is the final issue of that. And then you got Dark Crisis Worlds Without a Justice League Green Arrow issue 1. Future State Gotham 18. Batman Incorporated issue 1. I mean, Matt might want to read that, but like I'm like, I have no interest in it. The Flash Fastest Man Alive issue 2. DC's Terrors Through Time issue 1, which is their annual anthology horror book for October. And then they got Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries issue 1. So unless Matt was determined to read Incorporated, there's only 4 books there that we would have been talking about anyway. So that's actually worked out kind of nicely.
I'm really intrigued as to which of the 4, because there's 3 there that I'm like, I don't know which of the ones is that you're not reading. Is it the Dark Crisis one shot? The Green Arrow?
Yeah, I've not read any of those since the first couple.
Okay, right. I don't know if it was that, or if maybe you'd finally given up on Batgirls, or if it was.
Batgirls is great.
Jurassic League.
I've been enjoying Batgirls more than I did the first arc since it moved on.
Oh, interesting.
I know I'm digging Batgirls. But yeah, so I mean, I think me and Matt will probably talk between ourselves about which ones we'll try and squeeze into the following episode. But depending on how busy the following, because we might even just get all 4 of them on. But but next week no regular episode, but you'll get a Q&A episode instead. So look forward to the return of the regular episodes the week after. But that is the plan for the next couple of weeks. But I just don't want anyone to be disappointed next week thinking they're getting it, which is why I'd said at the start of the episode and the end. So if you go straight to the timestamps for the comment reviews right at the start without listening to the intro, it's on you. There's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, there's definitely some people who do that.
There probably is, but there's nothing I can do about that. But no doubt there'll be a tweet next week. Where's Comics From The Multiverse this week? Like it's the first week without a regular episode. Not counting the quarantine, but that doesn't count because there's no books.
Yeah, that wasn't really our fault. Since
we started the show in May 2016. So good run. So anyway.
Good effort.
But yes, so that's the plan for the next couple of weeks. Of course, thank you to our patrons. Thank you to everyone who enjoys the show. You can support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for however much you like per month. But at the $5 tier, you get early access to the show late on the Saturday when it's ready. And, of course, it's public on the Sunday for everyone else. So if that's of interest to you, go and have a look. But you can support us at any amount, and you can, of course, support us by liking, sharing, subscribing, and sharing us out on the Twitters and things like that, or Reddit. I sometimes see people sharing us on Reddit. All those things are appreciated and help spread the show, so thank you very much for doing so. But that is the episode. That is 326. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.